Magical World War I. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 301, Charlotte Mecklen, you've broken your defense. Mecklen was in high spirits. When she was sent to the Navy, she knew that this time would be very difficult. She also knew that because of Zimmerman, she became a thorn in the eyes of many nobles who had lost their sons. She was also mentally prepared. But Mecklen never thought that her predicament would suddenly become clear because of a junior who had helped her casually. When Charlotte told her that she was about to be promoted, Mecklen knew that he lied, but he still opened a way for Charlotte. The first rows of the empire did not think that this kindness would be rewarded. At most, it was a young man who admired her. Mecklen never lacked admirers. But she never thought that she could see a young man who was not inferior to Zimmerman, and was so excellent that even with the most demanding standards, he could not be picky. When Charlotte said, "Senior Mecklen, please allow me to give you a little surprise," she thought she saw that person again, the person she never wanted to see again. Charlotte's eyes did not have Zimmerman's rebelliousness, but they were full of wisdom and confidence, and sometimes even had a kind of high and mighty indifference. This is the characteristic of a time traveler. Every time traveler will have a psychological advantage over the natives, even if the other party is a hero, even if the other party is famous on the continent, even if the other party is a king, even if the other party is an evil god. Mecklen could not understand this indifference beyond the earth. A magic alchemy warship was given away as soon as it was said. Moreover, Mecklen could see that Charlotte did not do so on purpose, nor did she want to show off her elegance, but she really didn't care much about a magic alchemy warship. Zimmerman was afraid that he could not do this back then. Mecklen took a deep breath, suppressed his emotions with reason, and said, "I really need it, thank you, my little brother." Charlotte smiled slightly, and was about to hand over the magic code, when she heard Mecklen say lightly, "But, are you sure you really want to use the name of the Imperial Rose, instead of the Queen Anne?" Charlotte was embarrassed. He said in a somewhat embarrassed manner, "Senior sister, you are joking." It's not that Charlotte has never thought about giving Anne a gift, but Anne is obviously not suitable to accept such a gift now. Charlotte can guess with her toes that the magic alchemy warship she sent will be intercepted by the Count of Brittany. What's more, he urgently needs Mecklen's full support now, but the Count of Brittany will definitely give priority to the family. The time travelers often calculate benefits above feelings. Because they are walking on thin ice, they can't let their emotions take over. Mecklen smiled slightly and said, "I am actually the same as my cousin Dorothy. I like to have fun occasionally." Charlotte Mecklen, you are broken. Charlotte's cheeks were slightly red, and he was actually a little embarrassed. The golden goat Herolf looked at the Imperial Rose sailing into the fleet from a distance, and his heart was bleeding. It was not easy for him to get this magic alchemy warship Shafai. Although it was not as good as the Queen Bee, it was still his most valued treasure, even the best. He originally thought that his power was as stable as Mount Tai, with an island city that had never been breached, 2 magic giant ships, and tens of thousands of subordinates. He was the overlord of the Sea of Giant Whales. Even the Ingrima Empire did not dare to underestimate him, and many imperial navies were in collusion with him. But the Golden Goat Herolf never thought that his power seemed to collapse in an instant. First, the Queen Bee was robbed. He deeply regretted his carelessness at the time. He should not have stayed in St. Michael's Island and only let his men go to Britannia Island for trading. But that was originally ordinary. They had traded countless times. How could he have expected something to happen? Then he was lured by Mecklen and took away his main fleet. Although he felt distressed, he thought that as long as he returned to St. Michael's Island, he could easily pull up another fleet. But he never thought that this island city was completely emptied. The Golden Goat Herolf had seen the Vango clan before. Even if they were real Vango clan members, they would not do things so decisively. And his sword. Now even the last magic alchemy warship has been robbed. When the Golden Goat Herolf saw Mecklen soaring into the air, with a layer of magic array shrouding his body, he truly felt that the magic alchemy warship had changed hands, and tears suddenly flowed down. Painful and sad. This great pirate who roamed the Sea of Giant Whales never thought that he would be in such a difficult situation. He clenched his fists and whispered, "I still have St. Michael's Island. As long as St. Michael's Island is still in my hands, no one in this world can do anything to me. Just give me a few years, I can recover my strength and rebuild the Golden Goat Pirates. Menelman, Charlotte, you two dogs and bitches, just wait for me. Sooner or later, I will take revenge. The Golden Goat Herolf returned to the first floor of St. Michael's City. He was depressed and drank a lot of wine. When he woke up the next day, he felt something was wrong, but he didn't think about it carefully. He was in a depressed mood and drank some more wine. After 7 or 8 days, he suddenly shouted, "Why is there no wine?" No one answered for a long time. The Golden Goat Herolf left his residence, but found that the entire first floor of St. Michael's City was empty, and there was no one left. He was shocked and sobered up. He flew into the air and circled the island. Sure enough, there was no one left. Then he realized that all his men had escaped in the past few days. There were no ships on St. Michael Island, and even the extraordinary could not cross the sea. But now there is a fleet not far away. Most pirates are proficient in water. Even if they are not proficient in water, they can find something floating, swim across this distance, and surrender to the enemy outside. Menelman was a little hesitant about these surrendered pirates. Although these pirates are elite, and there are dozens of extraordinary people, it will be a great strength if they are annexed, but these pirates are unruly and may rebel at any time, which will also cause an impact on her fleet. After all, how to balance the old and new subordinates has always been a difficult problem. After noticing Menelman's hesitation, Sebastiani suggested that Charlotte handle these people. Last time, Charlotte reorganized the newcomers. She did a good job quickly and clearly, and she was a talent in this area. Charlotte had an easy life these days, practicing in seclusion every day, studying the labyrinth of Agneris, hoping to make further progress. But she didn't expect a big job to fall from the sky. Chapter 302 God Level. Faced with this task, Charlotte's first reaction was, how about killing them all? But he immediately knew that this was a bit unlikely. Killing prisoners has always been a bad omen. Especially whether it is Menelman or his Knights of Favonius, they have surrendered too many pirates. Killing so many people in one breath will make the hearts of those who surrendered disperse. It is definitely not possible to absorb them all. The middle and lower level pirates may still have a bit of humanity, but these pirates are either the loyal guards of the Golden Goat Roth or the crew of the magic alchemy warship. There are too few good people and too many bad people. Almost all of them are extremely evil. There are also a group of extraordinary people. If they join the fleet, they will definitely take a relatively high position and affect Menelman's decision. Charlotte hesitated for less than a minute and made a simple decision, to transform all of them into maze guards. Cappadocia City has only been mazified once, but now Charlotte has no shortage of diary pages, and Cappadocia City has no shortage of ships. It is too easy to complete the mazification twice. If all these vicious pirates are turned into maze guards, the problem can be fundamentally solved. There is a huge difference between the traversers and the natives. Charlotte herself did not realize that she would feel compassion when she encountered something that had nothing to do with her. This is the kindness in human nature, but when it comes to interests, it is easy to be inhumane. In general, friends are people, and enemies are not people. Charlotte did not even discuss with Menelman, and took the surrendered captives back to Cappadocia. In fact, he was not needed to besiege St. Michael Island, especially since Menelman got the imperial rose. As long as the first rose of the empire did not want to, Ralph could not leave St. Michael Island. Charlotte quickly completed the maze twice, making Cappadocia City, Machupi, and Silver Pigeon Castle the same city that has been mazed 3 times. Then, he conducted a round of investigation. Although this investigation was not very detailed, he tried his best to select dozens of pirates who were well loved and had a good reputation. The rest were all transformed into maze guards. When the transformation of the maze guards was completed, a thought suddenly came out of Charlotte's diary. Charlotte Mecklen had obtained more than 2,000 maze guards, of which more than 9 were extraordinary. She could use 10 maze transformation opportunities to summon Agneris once. Charlotte hesitated for a long time and decided to put this opportunity on hold for the time being. It's not a big deal to always summon evil gods. He never left Cappadocia after returning to it. He used this time to transform all the windows and mirrors in Cappadocia into a mirror world. The infinite mirror world of the Vango clan will have an additional superpower for every silver mirror condensed. When Charlotte condensed the first mirror, the superpower she awakened was the mirror spirit. Every time she saw a mirror spirit with the same power as her own would form in the mirror. Killing the mirror spirit would increase the power of the superpower. If the Van Gogh clan members ask themselves if they are not ready, they will give up entering the mirror. The mirror spirit is only a reflection of their own power. It is a tree without roots and water without source. It will automatically dissipate after a while and will not last forever. If a mirror with a killed mirror spirit is seen by other Van Gogh clan members, the mirror spirit will not appear again, and only the owner of the mirror world can be seen. Although killing the owner of the mirror world can also seize the mirror, the Van Gogh clan members generally do not do so. Vampires generally do not kill their own kind. When Charlotte condensed the second mirror, the awakened superpower was the mirror door. This is a skill to escape. When Charlotte condensed the third mirror, the awakened superpower was the mirror martial arts. He did not have time to check it at that time, and he condensed the fourth mirror. The mirror martial arts can imitate the enemy's martial arts. Of course, this kind of imitation is only a form, not the essence. Just as the mirror spirit cannot be copied, the supernatural powers other than those of the Van Gogh clan cannot copy extraordinary objects and objects, because they are essentially the reflection of the power of the Van Gogh clan and cannot transcend the limitations of the original owner. The same is true for the mirror warrior. When Charlotte condensed the fourth mirror, the supernatural power that awakened was the Palace of Mirrors. There is no need to elaborate on this supernatural power. When the Van Gogh clan members were able to condense the third mirror, most of them had already stepped into the middle and high levels. When condensing the fourth mirror, most of them had even reached the upper part of the high level, and a few may have even reached the holy level. People like Charlotte who rely purely on the power of the evil god are completely different from the serious Van Gogh clan members. In addition to practicing, Charlotte no longer cared about St. Michael Island. He turned the windows and mirrors of Cappadocia City into the mirror world, and suddenly sensed a huge mirror world that belonged to him, which was the mirror world from the Queen Bee. The Queen Bee had come to Cappadocia to dock, and her shadow was reflected by several mirrors, so the two mirror worlds overlapped. Charlotte did not hesitate at all, and lightly snapped her fingers, connecting the mirror world in Cappadocia with the mirror world on the Queen Bee, turning the two into one. In the next moment, Charlotte's mirror world suddenly expanded. It expanded from Cappadocia to the Queen Bee, and all the seas it had sailed through. Then Charlotte sensed the third mirror world, which was the mirrors he left on St. Michael's Island. Then he also sensed the fourth mirror world, which was Mendelman's Imperial Rose. The mirror world is a false world, and Charlotte cannot go to the place where the Queen Bee has been through the mirror world unless there is an exit. But there happened to be an exit on St. Michael's Island and the Imperial Rose. Charlotte also merged these two mirror worlds into it. However, whether it was the Imperial Rose or the Queen Bee, they were both ships after all, and they could not sail on land, so Charlotte could not connect to the two small mirror worlds in Strasbourg. Although his mirror world was vast, it was still limited to the sea. Charlotte was feeling the expansion of the mirror world, and suddenly heard a roar. He looked through the mirror and saw the golden goat elf, who was in a dim and dark basement, and seemed to be performing some secret rituals. Charlotte was slightly surprised. Although he controlled several mirrors on St. Michael's Island, he definitely did not leave any traces in this place. Then he realized that this was the golden goat elf deliberately letting him see it. He should have moved a mirror down. Charlotte could travel freely in the mirror world. He went to that mirror and looked outside. Sure enough, he saw the golden goat elf eating something crazily while staring at the mirror and roaring constantly. Charlotte stretched out her hand and touched the mirror, and a few words appeared on the mirror. "You are looking for me." The golden goat elf sneered and shouted, "Yes, I am looking for you. I knew you would come. Let's make a deal." Charlotte asked in surprise, "A deal? What deal can we make?" The golden goat elf sneered, "Above the saint rank is the god rank. I will give you the St. Michael Island, and you help me step into the god rank." Charlotte smiled and said, "Then you kill us." This deal sounds unreliable. The golden goat elf sneered and said, "You have seen that St. Michael many times during this period, right? He is the god rank. If I become a god rank, I will not be able to kill you." Charlotte said that she couldn't understand it. He hadn't learned this knowledge in college. He knew about the god rank. According to legend, some of the ancient human philosophers had set foot on the god rank. The Grand Duke of the Byron blood clan and the prince were both god rank, also known as the evil gods. He also knew that above the god rank was the demigod, but this knowledge was taboo, not to mention ordinary people. Even students in college were not allowed to touch it. Well, so far, no god rank has ever revealed his whereabouts in the world after entering this level. At most, some traces were left, and no one knew why. Charlotte was very curious and couldn't help asking, "That guy looks very abnormal. Does becoming a god rank turn him into this?" The golden goat Rolf took a bite of the thing in his hand. Charlotte took a look and immediately forced herself not to look at it again. The great pirate leader said lightly, "He's just incomplete. An incomplete god rank may lose a lot of things, such as human thinking, feelings, and something inexplicable." Charlotte became even more curious and asked, "Then why do you still want to become a god rank?" The golden goat Herolf was silent for a long while, and said, "You won't understand even if I tell you. When you step into the saint rank and gain countless wealth and power, you will probably understand my thoughts. There has always been an opportunity in St. Michael Island to promote the saint rank to an incomplete god rank. I hesitated before, but gave up in the end. This time, I admit failure, but I am unwilling to give up St. Michael Island and escape. The most precious thing in St. Michael Island is this opportunity to become a god rank. Now I don't hesitate. I want to become a god rank, even if it is incomplete, no matter how incomplete it is. The god rank is different from the saint rank." Charlotte asked again, "Why are you looking for me?" The golden goat Herolf sneered and said, "Because the four of them may also want to become god rank, only you won't, because this opportunity is only given to those above the saint rank, and there is, Charlotte Mecklen. I see the aura of evil gods in you. I believe you are not a good person either. You will definitely help me do this." Charlotte shrugged to show that she was innocent. He thought for a long time and asked, "How can I help you?" The golden goat Rolf threw down the things in his hand and said, "I knew you would agree. In the past, the kingdom of St. Michael built a huge altar. This altar can capture divine creatures from another world. Don't be so surprised. Most people in our world are ordinary people, but in some worlds, babies may be high-level extraordinary, such as the legendary dragon world. They actually captured two divine creatures, one of which was St. Michael. The king used the emerald book to shatter all of his soul and replaced it with his own soul. Then, the king became the patron saint of the kingdom of St. Michael." Charlotte's heart was in turmoil. He had never thought that the ancient kingdom of St. Michael could do such a heretical thing. They actually designed to capture a divine creature and crushed its soul? He had a doubt and asked, "Why does the kingdom of St. Michael have the jade book?" The golden goat Herolf laughed and said, "As long as there are suitable rituals and enough sacrifices, you can pray to the Serpent of Destiny and borrow the jade book once. If the Serpent of Destiny, one of the 9 righteous gods, hadn't intervened, how could a mere mortal king have done such a big thing?" Charlotte didn't dare to ask any more questions. He was afraid that if he asked about some of the Serpent of Destiny's privacy, the righteous god would pay attention to him. The golden goat Herolf was so miserable. Who said that the Serpent of Destiny didn't manipulate him? The golden goat Herolf said, "I want to do what that king did again. I will ask the Serpent of Destiny to borrow the jade book once and crush the soul of the other divine creature. I will take his place, but I need a helper. Not only can you get St. Michael Island, but you can also get the treasures I have collected over the years. They are not on St. Michael Island, but somewhere else, and only I know where they are." Charlotte didn't really believe the lies of the golden goat Herolf, but he was very interested in this plan. If there was a chance, he wouldn't mind tricking this big pirate once. Charlotte smiled and said, "Tell me what you want to do specifically." The golden goat Herolf raised his hand and threw out a roll of parchment. Charlotte was a little confused, but he still shook his body, and a flaming hand flew out, grabbed the parchment, and put it into the mirror world. He opened the parchment, took a look, and his face changed slightly. This was a magic contract. Once the contract is signed, you will be watched over by the Serpent of Fate, and everyone who violates it will be punished by this righteous god. Charlotte thought to herself, the value of this thing is probably not inferior to a high-level magic weapon. Golden Goat Herolf's plan may be true, but I don't believe him, just as he will never trust me. There must be some big conspiracy in this matter. Well, in fact, if I turn around and leave now, won't I earn a magic contract? I just don't know if Golden Goat Herolf will spit blood again. Charlotte weighed the pros and cons, thought over and over again, and couldn't make a decision for a long time. He was not thinking about whether he should agree or not, but thinking about how to squeeze more out of Golden Goat Herolf. Golden Goat Herolf said that he couldn't understand. How could Charlotte not understand? It's nothing more than fear of death. Saint Step will also die. The emperors of ancient China did a lot of ridiculous things because they were afraid of death. Golden Goat Herolf is just a trivial matter. Chapter 303. Sorry, Mr. Herolf. Golden Goat Rolf said, sign this contract, and I will tell you what to do." He was very confident that Charlotte would sign the contract. Charlotte pondered for a long time and said, "I need to think about it for a few more days." He took the magic contract, turned around and left, leaving the mirror. Golden Goat Rolf was about to collapse. He said he never thought that Charlotte could do this. "Isn't this a scam?" He agreed well, took the magic contract and left. Charlotte returned to Cappadocia and studied the magic contract for a while. Although she didn't see any flaws, she decided to ask Mandelman, Sabacidini, Domitian and Grand Priest Augsredin. After all, one person's plan is short, and many people's plan is long. These people are all people with outstanding vision and extensive knowledge, and they must be more efficient than him to figure it out alone. Charlotte immediately set off for St. Michael's Island. And the first person he found was Sebastini, a female pirate of the Saint rank. She was very enthusiastic about his arrival and asked, "Why do you have time to come to me?" Charlotte smiled awkwardly, took out the magic contract, and told him everything. Sebastini's face suddenly became very interesting. She asked with a smile, "Are you going to give me this opportunity to become a god?" Charlotte shrugged and said, "If you will become the guardian spirit of St. Michael Island, I hope you don't want it." Sebastini asked back, "What if it is a complete god rank?" Charlotte really didn't know how to answer. He had never thought about this question. But Charlotte was a math teacher after all, and her brain reacted very quickly. She replied, "As long as you are willing, I will do my best to help you reach the god rank." Sebastini was very moved. Although she knew that Charlotte had just given a magic alchemy battleship to Mandelman, she was still very moved. She sighed and said, "This is really an almost irresistible gift, but I choose to refuse. Even if what the Golden Goat Rolf said is true, this secret ritual cannot lead to the true god level, but only to an incomplete god level. The soul of a divine creature can only be shattered, not consumed. Therefore, even if you occupy that divine body, you will not become a complete god level, and you will still be disturbed by the soul fragments of the divine creature. Moreover, there are great risks in transferring souls, and there are very serious sequelae. In short, it's at most a divine puppet who still remembers his own name." Sebastini whispered, "Do you know? Even with so many shortcomings and uncertainties, the temptation of eternal life is still too great. I don't recommend you to talk about this with Domitian and High Priest Augustin. Maybe they won't, but what if? You probably don't know that the temptation of eternal life may be 100 for ordinary people, but for the holy level, it is more than 10 million. Every saint has the hope of reaching the god level, but since the age of gods, only a handful of people have reached the god level. Many people who are said to have reached the god level are only known through rumors, and no one knows the truth." Charlotte agreed. He did overlook this point, which is a common problem for time travelers. He asked again, "So is there any problem with this magic contract?" Sebastini took the magic contract, looked at it for a while, couldn't help laughing, and said, "This contract has 8 traps. It has not locked the terms yet, and the content can be changed before both parties sign their names, but the Golden Goat Rolf did not sign his name. Secondly, it doesn't have a head. The formal magic contract document should be witnessed by the Lord of the Court of Destiny, who travels through the long river of time, understands all mysteries, masters extraordinary rituals. Thirdly, he also barred some loopholes in the words to make it vague and refer to other things." Charlotte's eyes suddenly lit up and said, "It can be changed." Sebastini said, "Of course it can be changed." Charlotte asked, "Then why don't we sign a contract directly with the Holy Spirit?" Sebastini was shocked. She had never thought of this possibility. "Go and sign a contract with St. Michael." Charlotte nodded hard and said, "Now the only weapon of the Golden Goat Rolf is this guardian creature. Although St. Michael Island still has a protective shield, it is not enough to be afraid of. If we sign a contract directly with him, the Golden Goat Rolf is just a toad in the pot, and we can cook it however we want or steam it however we want." Sebastini shook her head and said, "It's useless. The only way to control St. Michael Island is to use the golden ring, unless it is destroyed. But if it can be destroyed, how can it be troubled by the Holy Spirit?" When Charlotte heard that this method didn't work, she thought about it carefully for a while and asked, "Can it sign a contract with the evil god?" Sebastini couldn't help but smile and said, "Of course. The status of the 9 righteous gods is above all the evil gods, but how can you make the evil gods obedient? They are good at manipulating people's hearts. There have always been legends about them seducing humans, and there is no record of them being deceived by humans." Charlotte thought to herself, "It will be possible in the future." Charlotte went to see Mandelman, Domitian and Grand Priest Augsredin again. but she never mentioned the matter of the god rank, and only asked if there were any problems with a magic contract. Mecklenburg also asked, where did this magic contract come from? Charlotte answered honestly that she got it from the golden goat Rolf. Mecklenburg just smiled and didn't ask any more questions. The problems she found were the same as Sebastiani. 8. Domitian, the old leopard man, was inferior, and only found 2 flaws, one of which was still under discussion and might not be accurate. Grand Priest Augsredin seemed very professional, picking out 2 more problems, and also taught Charlotte how to lock the magic contract document, asking him to modify it into a master-servant contract, put his own reputation in the master position, and then lock the contract document. When fighting with some unpredictable existence, you can try to throw it out. What if it works? Charlotte secretly gave the high priest a thumbs up and asked casually, if it is sold, how much can it be worth? High Priest Augsredin said meaningfully, no one will sell this kind of thing, you don't know what role it can play. Charlotte was just thinking about using it to deal with the golden goat Haralf. The words of High Priest Augsredin made him suddenly enlightened and said, I know, we have to pick a big one to use, it's not worth using it on someone as desperate as the golden goat Haralf. Charlotte went to find the golden goat Haralf again that night, and the first thing she said was, I'm sorry. Mr. Haralf, I accidentally lost the magic contract, can you give me another one? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 304 Playing with Words. Rolf, I'm definitely a first-rate master. Golden Goat Haralf's eyes went dark and he almost fainted. He resisted the urge to crush Charlotte to death and asked, did you lose the magic contract? Charlotte nodded honestly. He could be a teacher by profession, and his expression was as sincere as he wanted. Golden Goat Haralf only hated that he didn't know the secrets of the vampires, so he couldn't go in and catch Charlotte, the filthy and shameless villain, and inflict the most brutal torture. He suppressed his anger and said, do you think that magic contract documents are stones found everywhere on the roadside? Where can I find a second copy? Charlotte smiled embarrassedly and said, then I'll go back and look for it. He was pretending to leave, and the golden goat Haralf hurriedly stopped him, panting and said, I remember, I got another copy a long time ago. Charlotte was very surprised and shouted, give it to me quickly. The golden goat Haralf snorted coldly, turned and left. After a long time, he came back with another animal skin roll. It was colorful, and it might be the fur of a leopard. Charlotte sent out a flaming hand, and was about to grab the roll of animal skin, but the golden goat Haralf took it back without handing it over, saying, you have to sign it on the spot and you can't take it away. Charlotte nodded quickly and agreed, saying, if I don't sign it today, let the snake of fate send me back to my hometown and never leave again. The golden goat Haralf felt that this oath was very sincere and handed over the animal skin roll. Charlotte took a look and said, golden goat Haralf, there is a rule in my hometown. To sign a document, you must pay a fee called renby. Do you think you can give me a high-level extraordinary spear, preferably a blood-sucking weapon? The golden goat Haralf was furious and roared, Charlotte, you actually went back on your word. Aren't you afraid that the snake of fate will throw you back home and never leave? Charlotte smiled and said, my hometown is pretty good. Well, the earth is pretty good. With his current ability, when he returns to Earth, everything will be perfect except that Annie is gone. Moreover, he is confident that the golden goat Haralf will agree. The old goat has invested so much in him, and he will definitely increase his investment. This is called sunk cost. The golden goat Haralf stared at Charlotte. If ice could kill, Charlotte Mecklenburg must have been riddled with holes and died miserably, but the old goat is an extraordinary person of the ocean system, and he will not do such an alternative thing. His chest kept rising and falling, which was caused by being angry. The golden goat Haralf was silent for a long time, and then whispered, I have a knight's lance, wait for me to get it for you. Charlotte saw the old goat leave, and took a closer look at the animal skin scroll in his hand. Sure enough, it was exactly the same as the previous magic contract document. He secretly changed the content and changed it into a master-servant contract according to the instigation of the Grand Priest Augsredin. After a while, the golden goat Haralf came back with a knight's lance. He said coldly, I don't have any blood-sucking weapons. I'm not a vampire. But this whale-killing spear is a very famous weapon in Ingrima. Earl Lanmrock had longed for it, but unfortunately he couldn't get it. Charlotte had never heard of whale killing, but guessed that it might be related to whale slaughter. She flew out a flaming hand, took the knight's lance back, and made an expression that she wanted something else. The golden goat Herolf was furious and shouted, "Shameless Charlotte, if you dare to make another request, our cooperation will be invalid. You have done many evil things, wait for the punishment of the snake of fate." Although Charlotte didn't think that she had done many evil things, she estimated that the time had come, so she smiled and pretended to sign her name in front of the golden goat Herolf, but after taking a look, she pretended to be surprised and said, "Why is there no signature on it?" "No, I want you to sign first." Charlotte smiled and threw the magic contract document out of the mirror. The golden goat Rolf's teeth were almost broken, thinking, "This little thief is so cunning. I can't change the terms, but the original terms are enough to trap him to death." He also knew that if he changed the terms now, Charlotte would definitely be suspicious, so he could only bite his toothpick and write his name, and then threw the animal skin document into the mirror. Charlotte was very happy this time, and signed her name in a flamboyant manner. When the names of the two appeared on the magic contract document together, the animal skin turned into a stream of light, rushed out of the mirror world, and went to the mysterious and unpredictable distance. Charlotte watched the magic document, but she didn't see anything. She only heard a faint laugh, and there was joy in the laughter. This chuckle penetrated deep into the soul, and Charlotte's inspiration suddenly rose a lot. He was startled and hurriedly prayed silently in his heart, "You who travel through the long river of time, know all mysteries, master extraordinary rituals, and rule the court of fate. Do you like to watch fun? If you like, I will definitely give you more entertainment programs." Charlotte didn't know what the gods liked, but it was highly likely that they would not like blood sacrifices or gold and silver treasures. What humans can provide to the gods is probably only fun. The young man's voice came faintly, "I remember you." Charlotte's forehead was covered with cold sweat, and his mind was a little numb for a while. Being remembered by the snake of fate, this is a big intimidation. If there is a choice, Charlotte does not want to be remembered by any god. The golden goat Herolf was ecstatic and shouted, "Cunning Charlotte Mecklen, you've finally been fooled. You probably didn't notice that there is a clause in my document, we must witness the signing of the contract under the same sky. When it comes to playing with words, I, Herolf, am definitely a first-class master. Now, please be under the same sky with me." The golden goat Herolf picked up the mirror and directly broke through several layers of floor and roof, rushed out of the room, and flew high into the sky. As expected, Charlotte felt her body lighten and she actually escaped from the world in the mirror. The golden goat Herolf grabbed Charlotte's wrist and said with a cold grin, "I didn't write in my documents that the two parties to the contract cannot kill each other. Now you know what true wisdom is, right? You studied it for a whole day, but you still can't find these flaws." Charlotte said with a sad face, "I really can't see it." The golden goat Herolf laughed triumphantly and shouted, "Let me teach you a truth about life. Greed is the greatest enemy of mankind." Chapter 305, Charlotte Mecklen, I want to hear your screams. Charlotte said, "I didn't expect you to be a philosopher." The golden goat Herolf felt something was wrong, but when he thought of the magic contract that had been successfully concluded, he became confident again and said with a big laugh, "I didn't expect you to be so calm when you were about to die. Where's my queen bee? If you return it, I might consider letting you live." Charlotte said helplessly, "Mr. Herolf, you don't have to think about it. If I can't hand over the queen bee, it won't be in my hands. You must have inquired about it. The queen bee is parked at..." The golden goat Herolf grinned and interrupted him, saying, "Of course I know that the queen bee is parked at 698 South Riverside Street in 17s, the mansion given to you by Emperor Ingrimer XV, Alfred Guillaume. How else do you want to lie, Mr. Charlotte Mecklen, please share your made-up story," Charlotte said helplessly. "In fact, there are other residents over there." The golden goat Herolf smiled and said, "Is there a beautiful young widow next door?" Charlotte hurriedly said, "Yes, yes, yes." The golden goat Herolf said lightly, "I've been to see it in person. Number 698 South Riverside Street, Severance is on a small hill. There is only one house on the hill," Charlotte hurriedly said, "the other one is halfway up the mountain, on the back of the mountain. It's number 699 South Riverside Street, Severance." The golden goat Herolf showed a contemptuous look, saying keep making it up, and said, "Haha." Charlotte suddenly felt so tired. He thought secretly, Every word I said is the truth. Why doesn't this old goat believe it? He is so intolerant of honest advice." The golden goat Herolf looked out to sea and said slowly, "Hand over the queen bee, or I will make you suffer all the torture in the world." Charlotte shook her head and said firmly, "Come out." The golden goat Herolf sneered, "You won't cry until you see the coffin. I'll let you know why I am nicknamed the golden goat." Charlotte asked in surprise, "Hasn't Charlotte Mecklen plucked the wool from my wool countless times?" The golden goat Herolf felt a blockage in his chest. He regretted talking so much nonsense to Charlotte. The person had already fallen into his hands, but he could still be angry again. He grinned and said, "Charlotte Mecklen, I want to hear your screams." Charlotte chuckled and said, "Golden goat Herolf." Fart. Herolf's fighting spirit flowed all over his body, stimulating his intestines, and he really farted loudly as he was told. Charlotte hurriedly held her breath and thought to herself, "Fortunately, this is the sea and we are in the sky, otherwise we would be trapped in our own trap." Golden goat Herolf was horrified and urged his fighting spirit several times in a row, but he still couldn't do anything to Charlotte. In a fit of anger, he loosened his hands, but before Charlotte Mecklen fell half of her body, he couldn't help but reach out and grab the other party. Herolf became more and more panicked, and he didn't know what was wrong with him. He tried dozens of ways in a row to hurt Charlotte, but every way was interrupted by his own hands. At the end, the old goat's face was filled with fear. He hugged Charlotte and cried bitterly, shouting, "What's going on? What's going on? Why can't I hurt this despicable villain?" Charlotte touched his head and said, "Hand over the 3 gold rings on your hand." The golden goat Herolf watched helplessly as he handed his hand to Charlotte, and then watched helplessly as this despicable, vicious and vulgar guy took off the 3 gold rings on his hand and put them on his own hand happily. Charlotte said, "Let me go first." The golden goat Herolf seemed to be out of control. He carefully held Charlotte and landed on St. Michael's Island. Charlotte found a mirror and returned to the mirror world first. After ensuring her own safety, she said, "When you went to get the killer whale just now, I modified the magic contract document. I saw that you signed it very happily, so I forgot to remind you. But it's okay, it doesn't affect our cooperation." The face of the golden goat Herolf was red at first, then blue, and then he leaned back and fell down, smashing a pile of dust on the ground. Charlotte waited for a while, but the golden goat Herolf didn't get up, so she walked out of the mirror and didn't care about the old goat. She tried one by one. Just as she found the golden ring that controlled St. Michael's Island, a thought came out of the diary in her arms. Charlotte Mecklen has become the owner of St. Michael's Island, meeting the requirements for arranging the 29th maze, and St. Michael's Island will soon be maze-like. To make St. Michael's Island a maze, 18 trades need to be carried out, and during this period, you are not allowed to leave. Charlotte casually pulled out a blue ratchler, replaced it with ordinary bullets, and shot 7 times into the sky. Not long after, Sebastiani flew over the island. She saw Charlotte standing leisurely and the golden goat Rolf flying on the ground. She couldn't help but ask in surprise, "Did you get the old goat?" Charlotte shrugged and said, "I used the magic contract document and played a little word game." Although they were enemies, Sebastiani looked at this fellow pirate who was ranked above her in the top 10 pirates with her and cast a sympathetic look. This old goat was really miserable. Although she couldn't imagine how Charlotte could trick the golden goat Rolf into signing the contract and what she did with the contract, she could guess that the old goat was probably fainted by anger just by looking at the old goat lying on the ground. Sebastiani let out a long howl. Not long after, Domitian arrived at St. Michael's Island first. He was also very surprised when he saw this scene. Charlotte told her what happened just now in a vague way. Although Domitian, the old leopard man, was a little uneducated, he was a saint who had traveled to the new and old worlds. He had a sharp eye and could see at a glance that the golden goat Rolf had woken up, but he didn't say it. After a while, Menelman and the great priest Gusrabin also arrived one after another. Charlotte described again the matter of signing the magic contract document with Rolf. The 4 saints saw that the toes of the golden goat Rolf were trembling constantly. Although they could not see through the boots, they could tell that the old goat was tapping its toes. Grand Priest Augsradin smiled and patted Charlotte on the shoulder, saying, "Mr. Charlotte Mecklen, you have accomplished a great feat." Charlotte asked casually, "Did you pull out the old goat's baldness?" Chapter 306 Imperial Rose Fleet. The Grand Priest Augsradin said calmly, "We have taken over St. Michael's Island. Since the ancient St. Michael's Kingdom, No one has ever attacked this island city head-on, Charlotte said. Oh, it turns out that folding an old goat is not an achievement. The toes of the golden goat Herolf trembled more violently. The Grand Priest Oxfredin smiled slightly and said, it can be considered as such. The golden goat Herolf only hated that he did not really faint, and had to lie on the ground and suffer such humiliation. Charlotte handed over a gold ring and said, now this island city belongs to Senior Menelman. Menelman took it, played with it carefully for a while, then handed it to Charlotte and said, I really need that magic alchemy battleship, but I don't want this island. I'm not a pirate, I'm from the Fars Royal Navy. Now Fars and Ingrima are allies. Except for the two empires, I'm not afraid of any other enemies. Charlotte thought about it and said, yes, I'm also the General Affairs Officer of the city of St. Michael. He found that the four saints had strange expressions on their faces, so he explained and said, it was conferred by His Majesty Alfred Guillaume that he is the official political identity of Ingrima. Grand Priest Oxfredin smiled slightly, easing the strange atmosphere, and said, Charlotte, you will become a legend in the future. Charlotte smiled brightly and said, it seems that I can become a legend just by being a novelist. After these words came out, the four saints seemed to see a huge word written in the languages of 8 countries, including Fars, Ingrima, and Byron, above the head of Mr. Charlotte Mecklen. The great priest Oxfredin coughed and said, indeed. Menelman thought about it. She had not read Charlotte's novels. After all, she had been on the sea during this period. But she had heard that Charlotte had written several novels under the pen name of Anne Mecklen, and was quite famous. She smiled faintly for the sake of her junior, which was considered to be an approval of this statement. Domitian said a little unconvinced, do you know how difficult it is to become a legend as a novelist? Charlotte shrugged and said, I don't know. Domitian decided not to discuss this issue with this ignorant boy. Sebastiani was a little curious and asked, have you ever written a novel? Charlotte grinned and said, I'll give you a few next time. Sebastiani smiled and said, your novels must be very interesting. The golden goat Rolf on the ground finally stopped moving. Although he had been to Bredonia recently, he was thinking about his queen bee and didn't care about any novels at all. He finally felt less embarrassed when he heard Charlotte bragging that she could become a legend as a novelist. After all, Charlotte's bragging sounded more embarrassing than him. The old goat would never believe it. Charlotte could write novels and become famous as a novelist. As for becoming a legend, listen to his fart. Why didn't he say that he could trick a princess by writing novels? This is more than just bragging. Charlotte can even make whales fly all over the sky. Although Menelman refused the gold ring, he did not refuse to use St. Michael Island as another base. She now has a magic alchemy warship, the Imperial Rose, and more than 200 warships of various sizes. She has 2 naval bases in Cappadocia and St. Michael Island. The 2 cities together have a population of more than 120,000. And there are 2 helpers of the saint rank. They are already a force that cannot be ignored on the giant whale sea. Especially Cappadocia and St. Michael City. These 2 cities are trade nodes on the sea, and there are channels to Silver Pigeon Castle, Machupi, Mostar Castle, and Interlaken City. Goods from the sea can be sent to these cities, and goods from the inland can be traded directly, saving the long transportation. Charlotte does not levy taxes in these cities, but he is also the largest trader in these cities. When this huge commercial system starts to operate, the wealth harvested is far more than the mere taxation. The wealth accumulated through trade is enough to feed such a large fleet. This fleet itself is also the best umbrella for the commercial fleet, and it is even a maritime trader itself, which can form a self-sufficient circulation system. You know, St. Michael Island alone is enough to support a pirate fleet and a population of 100,000. This business system is much larger than St. Michael Island, and the business environment is better. The benefits gained will definitely far exceed those of St. Michael Island. After Menelman captured St. Michael Island, he wrote a document to report the recent results. Charlotte originally wanted to go back to South Seraph. After all, that was the area where he was in office, but Menelman asked him to wait a little longer, so he stayed for the time being. Moreover, South Seraph was engaged in a tacit war with the Black Phoenix dynasty, and Chloe would not attack South Seraph, so it was no problem not to go back for the time being. The scenery of St. Michael Island is much better than that of South Seraph. About 10 days later, there was a document from the Empire. The powerful countries in the old continent have magic alchemy communication devices. The convenience of long-distance communication is not as good as telegraphs and telephones, but the transmission distance is far enough. This document was transmitted through the magic alchemy communication device. After all, Menelman was born in an extraordinary family and was also an orthodox officer of the Imperial Navy. The fleet was equipped with such a set. The document from Strasbourg granted Menelman a new position and political identity, the 17th class Imperial Captain, the senior commander of the Imperial Rose Fleet. But the most important thing was not the promotion in position and political affairs, but the reward from Julius Axel VI, who recognized Menelman Surmey's private ownership of this fleet. In other words, this Imperial Rose Fleet was transferred from the Imperial Navy to Menelman's private fleet. Of course, the Emperor paid very little. When Menelman became a naval commander, he had only a few warships under his command. The current strength was almost all won by Menelman himself. Although Charlotte gave the senior sister great help in the later period, the early hard work was all supported by Menelman alone, and the two saints were also recruited by her alone. At the same time, the document from Strasbourg also granted Domitian and Sebastian imperial official positions. Both of them were warrant officers of the 20th grade and 5th level. This was because their status as saints directly skipped countless grades and were promoted across classes. In addition, there was a document related to Charlotte. This document did not upgrade Charlotte's position. He was still the 25th grade and 5th level general secretary. But it gave him a new political identity, the plenipotentiary diplomatic consul in St. Michael City and Cappadocia City. This identity is quite special, but it is not a very important political identity. Charlotte didn't quite understand what this operation was. She just knew that from now on, Menelman's fleet stationed in Cappadocia City and St. Michael City would all need him to have the final say. After all, the Imperial Rose Fleet is a Fars fleet. If you want to legally dock at the port of Ingrima, you need the Fars consul to apply to the local city manager. Well, the Fars resident diplomat and general secretary of Cappadocia City and St. Michael Island happened to be Charlotte. As long as Charlotte Mecklen has no objection, Menelman can do anything. The document from Strasbourg made the fleet excited from top to bottom. This means that the Empire recognizes Menelman's achievements and that everyone has a formal identity. When Sebastiani followed Zimmermann to surrender to Fars, she only got a position of a third-level military commander of the 27th grade, which is equivalent to the third-level general affairs director, and she has no political identity. She is not as good as Charlotte now, who is a saint. The document from Strasbourg is equivalent to announcing one thing to the nobles of Fars: a new top dignitary of the empire is rising. Menelman has broken free from the shackles of his family and has become a lord with independent power. As long as Menelman can survive the war between several great empires, she is almost destined to become an important figure in Fars, and this identity does not come from her family, but from her personal tyrannical strength and brilliant record. Charlotte was also happy for this senior. He stayed on St. Michael Island for 3 more days, celebrated with everyone, and then took his loyal servant, Rolf, the former leader of the Golden Goat Pirates, back to Interlaken. He did not stay in Interlaken either. He set off again on the same day and returned to his loyal Sedona, which was where he should stay. According to the normal rhythm, this is the front line of the war between Fars and the Black Phoenix dynasty. Outside Sedona is the military camp of the Black Phoenix dynasty. Chloe, the most famous general of the Black Phoenix dynasty's royal branch, led his troops to attack Sedona. The two sides have already fought fiercely, about more than 100 times. Well, every day, the clerks of both sides will send war reports to their respective capitals after confessions. As the saying goes, war reports will lie, but the battle lines will not. In order to cooperate with the battle report, the documents of both sides made Sedona fall and conquer more than 10 times, and even Interlaken was fallen twice. Chloe's camp was destroyed 5 times, and both sides also gained a lot in the field battle. Originally, it was difficult to get the important evidence heads from such a battle report. Neither Charlotte nor Chloe was the kind of person who massacred civilians for credit. But it happened. Although Charlotte did not experience a few battles on St. Michael's Island, she was not short of heads. After all, there were still many dead pirates. Charlotte used some of these heads for herself and sold some to Chloe. What's more annoying is that Charlotte has been working hard for so long, but there is still no movement in the direction of Strasbourg. However, Chloe was promoted twice because of her brave fighting on the front line and her outstanding performance. She was very handsome. Charlotte returned to Sedona and had just dealt with government affairs for 2 days when she received a very shocking news from Strasbourg. Menelman summarily raided a fleet of Byron in the Sea of Giant Whales, defeated it with dignity, and captured 2 magic alchemy warships and more than 10 warships. This victory pushed the reputation of the first rose of the empire to a new peak. You know, although the Fars Empire fought fiercely on the main battlefield of Felendon, both sides also invested a lot of manpower, but did not achieve any decent results. Menelman's victory was even the first hearty victory of Fars after the Fars Empire and the Byron Empire went to war. After receiving this battle report, Charlotte sent someone to Strasbourg to send a congratulations to Menelman. Only Strasbourg has a magic alchemy communication device, and his Sedona does not have this thing. Things like congratulatory letters must go through official channels to appear more formal. Charlotte originally thought that he would just fish like this until the end of the war, but on the 5th day after he returned to Sedona, he received a tip from Chloe, asking him to retreat as quickly as possible. This branch of the Black Phoenix dynasty's royal family didn't say anything, but Charlotte smelled something wrong in this private letter. Chloe would never lie to him in this regard, because once Charlotte was captured by the Black Phoenix dynasty, his confession alone would be enough to put the most famous general of the branch of the Black Phoenix dynasty's royal family on the gallows. The highest charge could be treason. Charlotte hesitated for a long time and decisively chose to ask for help from his senior. He was afraid that his loyal servant, Rolf, the former leader of the Golden Goat Pirates, could not handle it with just 1 sheep. If Menelman could send Domitian and Shabastany over, there would be 3 sheep. Oh, these 2 don't have sheep nicknames. In short, if there are 3 saints, Charlotte believes that it will be enough to handle the situation. Less than 2 hours after he sent out the letter asking for help, he heard earth-shaking roars outside Sedona City, and Chloe's camp was in turmoil. Charlotte stepped onto the top of the city wall without hesitation. Chloe led an army and rushed out of the barracks, making a gesture to him from a distance. Charlotte probably understood that this general of the royal branch of the Black Phoenix dynasty was saying, "I told you to leave. If you don't leave quickly, it's too late now, so accept your fate." It even implied, if you are unlucky, you must die in battle, don't be captured alive. Even if you are reluctant to die, if you are captured alive, don't give me up, it will not be good for you. If you don't give me up, maybe I can help. Charlotte returned a beautiful look, and the 2 sides completed an extremely complex communication on the battlefield through a gesture and a look. This is a tacit understanding cultivated after fighting countless battles. The main forces of the 2 people on the battlefield are their own clerks. Chapter 307, Holy Ranks. No wonder Chloe told me to run away quickly, asking for monthly tickets. There will be updates soon. Charlotte pointed at Chloe and shouted with great courage, "You defeated General, you are here to die again." Chloe also abandoned all distractions and shouted, "I don't know who it is. He was beaten several times and ran away in panic." Charlotte had a quick-handed clerk beside him, constantly giving him lines. After all, Chloe had been at the front line, and he had just returned. If he didn't get the battle report right, it would be easy to be exposed. The 2 were just gathering their strength and scolding each other, when they heard a clear and long whistle like a phoenix coming from Chloe's barracks. A young man in military uniform slowly rose into the air. He glanced at Charlotte with contempt. Although the 2 were far apart, Charlotte was still struck by lightning and her whole body froze. "Saint, no wonder Chloe told me to run away quickly. If it weren't for my loyal servant, the former leader of the Golden Goat Pirates, Rolf, I would have died this time. Well, maybe I can escape alone, but my Knights of Favonius are definitely finished. I just don't know if this old guy is capable." When he was on St. Michael's Island, he didn't perform very well. He was often stupid. Chloe finally remembered some old feelings and hoped that Charlotte could die with understanding. She said loudly, "This is Major Andreas of our Black Phoenix dynasty, and he is also the youngest saint in the Black Phoenix dynasty. It is really an honor for you to die in his hands." Charlotte had never heard of this saint of the Black Phoenix dynasty. As for the youngest, he didn't take it seriously. Although this Major Andreas looked young, his actual age should not be much younger than Princess May or senior sister Menelman, and it is even more likely that he is a few years older. Charlotte has seen many of these so-called youngest saints. Well, he had really seen the youngest saint in the old world, Zimmermann Axel Robin. Andreas had no intention of speaking at all. He stretched out his hand and grabbed it, and a knight's lance flew out of the barracks. He held the knight's lance, took a deep breath, and a clear sound like a phoenix rang out from his body. Charlotte realized that the sound just now was not a deliberate whistle made by this person, but the special method he practiced. When it was in operation, the fighting spirit vibrations spontaneously generated. It comes with background music. What an awesome method! Charlotte just thought of this, and Andreas threw the knight's lance in his hand. The knight's lance flashed like lightning, accompanied by bursts of phoenix-like whistles. A ray of terrifying thoughts on the lance directly locked Charlotte's soul, making him feel that there was no escape. If there were no accidents, Charlotte would definitely die under this shot. Chloe couldn't bear to watch, and thought to herself, I will collect your body. I just hope that Andreas's blow will make his body less broken. Charlotte didn't move, but his loyal servant Harolf slowly took out a killer whale and twisted it in the air. At the moment when Andreas's knight's spear was about to pierce Charlotte, he shook the ordinary knight's spear into countless powder. Charlotte knew that the killer whale was far more lethal in Harolf's hands than in her own. He was not without a weapon, so he returned this high-level extraordinary knight's spear to the golden goat. The old goat easily defeated Andreas's attack, but still showed no emotion. In fact, since he became Charlotte's loyal servant, he has been autistic and never spoke again. Reality is too cruel, and the blow to the golden goat Harolf is too great. If he goes to the 6th hospital in any city on earth and gets a psychiatric examination, he will definitely get a diagnosis of severe depression, severe anxiety, and autism. As for the authenticity of this diagnosis, we will not discuss it. Anyway, it must be this symptom. The move of the old goat shocked all the soldiers of the two armies. When Andreas appeared, the knights of Favonius were in despair. Countless people looked at Charlotte, hoping that their coach could turn the tide, just like before. They did not expect that Charlotte could really turn the tide. The move of the old goat this time immediately boosted the morale of the entire knights of Favonius, and everyone smiled. So what about the holy rank? We have it in the knights of Favonius too. No one thought about how this person got his holy rank? Andreas was surprised to see that his perfect attack was easily broken by a simple old man beside Charlotte. He spoke for the first time on the battlefield, and his voice was extremely beautiful, just like the chirping of the most beautiful bird in the mountains and forests. Who are you? A saint will not appear on the continent for no reason. I have not heard of your image among the saints of the Fars Empire. Don't be indifferent. The old goat was indifferent, as if he didn't hear what Andreas said. Charlotte hurriedly tried to smooth things over, saying, he is just like that, he doesn't talk to me much, but, you want to kill me just after we met, I won't be polite with you. Charlotte patted the golden goat Harolf on the shoulder and said, go all out and take down this bastard. You actually want to kill me as soon as we meet, you bastard. You don't know what you mean. The golden goat Harolf moved his face, and really wanted to say, is there anyone in the world who is more of a bastard, and more of a bastard than you? The old goat was moved by the pain in his heart, and he didn't dare to think about it anymore. If he thought about it anymore, he was afraid that he would cry. The pirate king of the giant whale sea, who owned ancient magic warships such as St. Michael Island and the Queen Bee, as well as a magic alchemy warship, dozens of warships, and countless subordinates. Now he has fallen to being used as a servant. The old goat rose into the air, and with a point of the killer whale in his hand, all his grief and anger turned into charge. The surging ocean-type fighting spirit in his body continued to accumulate momentum after this assault. Halfway through the journey, he developed a strong fighting spirit like the surging sea. Andreas did not expect that this seemingly ordinary old man would actually use such explosive moves. His strength was so strong that even among the saints, he was at a very high level. He did not even dare to face the enemy head-on. After all, the two sides took different paths. The golden goat Harolf practiced both ocean-type fighting spirit and magic, and each of his attacks had the power to stir the sea. Andreas took a light and fast path. Fighting hard was not his forte. He did not dare to let the old goat accumulate momentum to the peak, otherwise the old guy could really kill him with one shot. Andreas suddenly pulled into the air, wanting to fight in the sky. Chapter 308. Each of the 5 great empires has a top master. The golden goat Harolf's spear force suddenly rolled up, like a huge wave suddenly rising on the sea, chasing Andreas closely. His spirit, consciousness, and spear force all locked the youngest saint of the Black Phoenix dynasty. Although Charlotte had seen many saint-level battles, she still couldn't help but applaud and praise that the old goat actually had a trick. Charlotte had seen the golden goat Harolf take action, but every time he took action, he was besieged by at least 3 saint levels, and every time he was in a very embarrassing situation, either relying on the magic alchemy warship or relying on the Holy Spirit Michael to resist hard. which made him always subconsciously think that this loyal servant was not very strong. But at this moment, seeing the old goat fighting alone, Charlotte realized that the old guy was really something. In the sky, the roar of fighting spirit soon broke out. Originally, because the weather was clear, there were not many clouds, but they were all shattered, like a tearing silk in the sky. Charlotte got excited on the spur of the moment, picked up collapsing mountain, jumped off the top of the city wall, and shouted, "Chloe, come and fight. You will definitely die on the battlefield today." Chloe also had the same intention, picked up her usual spear, rushed out of the army, and shouted, "Charlotte, this is not the first time you've boasted, so you know, I'm no longer a 15th level knight." Charlotte was surprised and shouted, "Have you fallen to the extraordinary level again? You can't do it either." Chloe Harrion was furious and shouted, "I'm already a 16th level knight." Charlotte thought to herself, "This guy is really working hard, but I haven't eaten in vain, and now I'm also an 11th level extraordinary person." Charlotte and Chloe are old rivals. Both of them know each other's spear skills very well. After fighting for 17 or 18 moves, Chloe couldn't help but secretly asked, "No wonder you didn't run away. Where did this old thing come from? Why haven't I heard of him?" Charlotte whispered, "Do you know the first rose of the empire?" Chloe sneered and said, "That's the first rose of your fars," but he quickly replied, "Of course I've heard of it. Which young man in the old continent hasn't heard of Miss Mendelman's fame? However, although I heard that you shamelessly claim to be Miss Mendelman's junior, it is impossible to invite her to Sedona. Besides, this lady is full of dark fighting spirit, and this old guy is full of ocean fighting spirit. And I absolutely don't believe that Miss Mendelman would disguise herself as such an ugly old man." Charlotte made a sound of disgust and said, "What are you thinking? My senior sister recently captured St. Michael's Island." Chloe was shocked and shouted, "What? The first rose of the empire actually captured St. Michael's Island, which is said to have never fallen? What about this old man?" He looked up at the sky, with a look of horror on his face, and shouted, "Is it the Golden Goat Elf? Tell me quickly, how did Miss Rose take over St. Michael's Island? I'm at the front line and haven't received the news yet." Of course, Charlotte would not tell Chloe the truth. Although they were friends, they were still enemies after all. Moreover, he left the front line without permission, which was a crime of some magnitude. Even Mendelman did not ask for credit for him. You know, the corruption of the imperial bureaucracy is unimaginable, and such a handle cannot be known to others. He made up a bunch of things on the spot and praised Mendelman to the sky. Chloe was fascinated by what he heard and was almost shot to death by Charlotte. She cursed him in anger and whispered, "I told you to run away quickly, but you actually wanted to kill me, asshole." He tightened his spear, shook his spirit, and showed all his skills, and never let Charlotte off again. However, after more than 100 moves, Chloe was shocked to find that although he had been promoted to a higher level, he still couldn't take down this old opponent. Charlotte also took the opportunity to ask, "What the hell is this guy named Andreas?" Chloe asked, "You don't know? You are so ignorant. You should have heard that after Zimmerman's death, each of the 5 empires had a top master." Charlotte shook her head and said, "I haven't heard of it." Chloe complained, "It's normal that you haven't heard of it. When that monster Zimmerman was alive, who would dare to hang the title of the top master on themselves? Only after his death did this thing come into being. The top master of your fars is the Count of Brittany." Charlotte was shocked and asked, "Really?" Chloe said unhappily, "Everyone knows this. Why would I lie to you? What's the point of lying to you?" Charlotte really didn't know that Anne's old father was actually the top master of the Fars Empire. This matter is really too terrifying. He always has a sense of crisis that if he angers Anne a little in the future, he will have to face the anger of the top master of the Fars Empire. Charlotte couldn't help but ask, "Why isn't the number 1 master of our Fars Empire Count Galenod? He is the Minister of War." Chloe scolded, "How should I know? Can you please stop interrupting?" Charlotte hummed and asked, "The number 1 master of Ingrima is Count Victory Champagne, right?" Chloe nodded and said, "Yes, it's Count Lamerlock." Charlotte asked, "This person doesn't look like the number 1 master of the Black Phoenix dynasty, and he may not be as good as my senior sister Mendelman." He forgot to glance at the sky. Andreas was already at a disadvantage in all aspects. The old goat was really awesome. Chloe was furious and shouted, "How can you look down on our Black Phoenix dynasty? Although Andreas is powerful, how can he be the top master of the Black Phoenix dynasty? It's his father. His father, Viscount Constantine, is the top master of our Black Phoenix dynasty." Charlotte couldn't help but say, "The top master of your Black Phoenix dynasty is so shameless. How come the top masters of our Fars and Ingrima are both earls, but only your family is a viscount?" Chloe couldn't help but said angrily, "I won't talk to you, idiot." The two exchanged gossip and began to get serious, wanting to verify what level their martial arts had reached during this period of time. The battle in the sky became increasingly fierce, and the old goat vented all the anger that had been suppressed recently. Andreas complained bitterly. After all, he was still young, and he was 40 to 50 years younger than the golden goat Rolf. How could he make up for the 40 to 50 years of cultivation gap, even if he was a genius? What's more, who is not talented to be promoted to the saint level? Andreas could only rely on his swift body movements to roam the air, moving at full speed, fearing that if he was a little slow, the old goat would find his flaw and shoot him dead in front of the formation. Chapter 309, Demonic Flame Horse. Charlotte used all his strength to activate the starry battle key, and fought with Chloe for hundreds of moves. Suddenly, he retreated dozens of steps, and thrust Collapse Mountain into the ground. The starry battle key retreated like a tide, and returned to the 9 bloody whirlpools, and turned into bloody glory again. Chloe didn't care about anything, and thrust with his spear, swiftly. Charlotte threw out a blood-sucking hand axe. He hadn't used this weapon for a long time. When he first cultivated the blood flame energy, he had imagined that he could control the weapon in the air to fight, but he didn't expect that he would end up on the road of hand-to-hand combat. Chloe used his spear to poke away, and Charlotte gained a gap. The bloody glory in his body was transformed into the blood flame energy of the Adonis family. With a move in the air, the blood-sucking hand axe that was pierced by Chloe turned back in the air, making a whimpering sound, which was very fascinating. Chloe couldn't help but scold, "What kind of crooked way is this?" Charlotte smiled slightly and said, "This is not a crooked way, but a secret method created by the great philosopher Protagoras of the human race." The blood flame energy was amplified by the other 8 bloody vortexes, rising layer by layer. The power of each bloody vortex would increase the blood flame energy by 1 level, and the blood-sucking hand axe would increase its power at any time, and the changes would be more unpredictable. In just a moment, the blood flame energy increased to the 11th level. Just when Chloe thought that Charlotte had just changed her ability and stopped there, she suddenly sensed that this difficult opponent had risen another level and broke through to the 12th level. This is the real peak of the intermediate level. Charlotte was just looked at by the Serpent of Destiny not long ago. The favor of this righteous god allowed his cultivation to enter a rapid development again. After advancing, Charlotte snapped her fingers, and a huge red horse with black flames all over its body kicked and stomped out of the void, slowly walking out, with a complete saddle and bridle on its body, snorting constantly. This is the blood flame energy of Adonis, the awakened new ability, the Magic Flame Horse. Of course, it should actually be called Summoning the Magic Flame Horse. Adonis's ability is one of the 2 abilities that Charlotte awakened the earliest. Now there is almost no improvement in insight, but Adonis's blood flame energy, because the blood clan evil god Karnstein may come at any time. The crisis is always with you, like a shadow following the wind. Charlotte has put the most effort in this secret method. However, he seems to be more talented in Asilo's swordsmanship, and the progress of this secret method has never been as good as the Angel's Thorn. Now Charlotte, with the favor of the Serpent of Fate, has finally broken through it. Not only has his own extraordinary level broken through to the 12th level, but he has also finally cultivated a Magic Flame Horse. Just as Charlotte was about to climb onto the horse, he heard a horse neigh. The flame horse that he summoned not only did not obey his command, but also opened its huge mouth and bit down fiercely, extremely ferociously. Fortunately, Charlotte retracted her hand quickly, so she was not bitten by the giant flame horse. Chloe couldn't help laughing wildly and shouted, "Are you going to fight with your jokes?" Although we in the Black Phoenix dynasty don't have the secret inheritance of the human philosopher Protagoras, and no one knows the stuff of vampires, we also know that the summoned alien creatures must be tamed before they can be commanded as desired. You actually plan to summon it on the battlefield? And plan to use it to fight immediately? That's too whimsical. Now I'm teaming up with this flame horse to kill you. Chloe raised his spear and chose an angle, always keeping a distance of Charlotte from the flame horse. Obviously, he knew that this violent creature from another world would definitely not distinguish between enemies and friends, and would definitely attack him as well. While Charlotte was fighting with Chloe with a blood-sucking hand axe, he pulled out the blood rose and held it with a flaming hand, and used swordsmanship to kill the magic flame horse. The magic flame horse was at the same level as Charlotte, and was also at the peak of the middle level. Its speed was extremely fast, almost as fast as Charlotte's light agility x10, and it could also spit magic flames from its mouth, which made it extremely powerful. Charlotte complained bitterly and regretted that he changed his secret method at the last minute. He was about to transform his power, but he was entangled by Chloe and the magic flame horse, and he had no room for a while. Just when Charlotte felt embarrassed, Chloe suddenly retracted her spear and turned around and ran. Charlotte felt a little strange, but the magic flame horse rushed up again, and he had to deal with this beast first. Without Chloe, a magic flame horse alone was just a small matter for Charlotte. He subdued the demon flame horse without much effort and burned it with blood flame gas. The demon flame horse, which had been burned by the blood flame gas, finally stopped resisting. It kept sending out a consciousness, expressing that it was very hungry. The demon flame horse was transformed from the demon spirit horse. It was not a flesh and blood creature in essence. Their food in the old world was only blood energy. Charlotte continuously infused her own blood energy into it, feeding about half of her strength to the demon flame horse. Only then did it burp, give up resistance, and get close to Charlotte. The demon flame horse, which had been burned by the blood flame gas, was fed by Charlotte's blood energy. It looked more ferocious and strong than when it was first summoned. It spewed black smoke with every snort, and demon flames lingered between its mouth and nose, but the black flames that originally lingered on its body were restrained. This magic flame horse is even bigger than the tallest char horse in the old world, more than 3.5 picometers, and even stronger than the Asian elephant on Earth. Its size is only slightly smaller than the largest African male elephant, with slender limbs and a long flowing tail. In terms of appearance, it is definitely the Lubu of horses. Charlotte climbed onto the magic flame horse and raised her hand to recall the blood-sucking spear that could collapse the mountain. The knight spears commonly used by the major empires in the old world were originally weapons for matching mounts. Their length is comparable to that of the ones on Earth, or even longer. It is impossible to wield them without extraordinary arm strength. Charlotte was about to demonstrate the spearmanship of riding a horse when she saw the golden goat elf standing quietly by the side. He couldn't help but ask, "Why don't you fight?" This old goat didn't say a word, and was mainly autistic. Charlotte looked up, and the shadow of Andreas, the youngest saint of the Black Phoenix dynasty, was no longer there. He asked, "Did you win?" The golden goat elf still didn't say anything, and Charlotte was too lazy to use the master's authority to force the old goat to speak. He took Herolf back to Sedona. That night, the clerks of both sides exchanged information. Charlotte then realized that it was indeed the golden goat Herolf who won, but the young saint ran away very quickly, and the old goat was not good at speed, so he still escaped. Chloe gave up the fight when he saw Andreas bleeding and running away all the way. He was afraid that the golden goat Herolf would kill him on the spot with a casual blow. Chloe asked himself, and he was determined not to influence Andreas's decision, and he didn't believe that Charlotte could control Herolf. Of course, Charlotte would not tell him that she could completely control the old goat. In fact, if there was a suitable situation, Charlotte would not mind killing this enemy. Of course, he didn't care about Chloe, because the two sides had some tacit understanding after all, and could fight at tacit battlefield. If he killed Chloe and got a belligerent general in return, wouldn't he be in big trouble? Charlotte just wanted to muddle through and survive until the end of the war. His current position was high enough, and he didn't want to risk his life for credit. Considering this, Charlotte didn't let the old goat attack again. After a battle with the Saint Order, the Sedona front fell into a silent war again. It was mainly because Andreas came and brought out the old goat, and Chloe couldn't write a battle report. He couldn't say how brave he was in front of a Saint Order, right? That would test his superior's IQ too much. 10 days later, Andreas returned to Chloe's barracks. The youngest Saint Order in the Black Phoenix dynasty was obviously less arrogant, but still full of confidence. The first thing he did when he came back was to let Chloe attack again. Chloe was horrified and said, "Do you have a way to deal with the Saint in Sedona this time?" Andreas said, "I fought with him and was seriously injured. I have just recovered from my injuries in the past few days." Logically, the Fars people will definitely take advantage of the situation to pursue and completely wipe out you and your troops, but they didn't move, which shows that there must be something wrong with them. Chloe thought to herself, "Of course I know there is something wrong with Charlotte. He looked for Princess May not long ago, and this time he found the golden goat. He can easily pick up a saint. If he has no problem, I can take off my brain and use it as a cup, Andreas said. That's why I asked you to attack. As long as you attack, you can expose their flaws. Believe me, if there are no flaws, they will definitely not sit still. Chloe thought to herself, I don't believe you. Of course I know they have no flaws. It's that bastard Charlotte who wants to fish on the front line. I tried it before, but Princess May almost beat me into an idiot with a brain smash. Now you want me to try again? Whose fault is it if I die? Chloe was not so cowardly before. But the blow from Princess May did make him think a lot more clearly. Either a tacit war or a suicidal war. He has no choice. Andreas persuaded her for a few words, but Chloe refused to agree. Although Andreas was a saint, his father was just a viscount, and Chloe was still a branch of the royal family. The two of them were not in a subordinate relationship. Chloe refused to attack Sedona City, and Andreas had no choice. He believed in his judgment, which must be right. If Sedona City really had overwhelming strength, there was no reason not to attack with all their strength to kill Chloe and his army. Since the other party did not do so, there must be a weakness. Andreas tried to persuade her several times but gave up reluctantly. He thought to himself, since Chloe doesn't agree, I will just go to Sedona alone. If my guess is correct, the saint should have left. Even if my guess is wrong, although the saint is stronger than me, his speed is far slower than mine, so he can escape. Andreas didn't know that when he was about to break into Sedona City, the old leopard man Domitian had just come from St. Michael Island and was being treated to a feast by Charlotte. Chapter 310 Wrong Information. Mecklenburg had just captured 2 magic alchemy warships. While his strength had greatly increased, he was also seriously short of manpower. Sebastian was a serious pirate, proficient in various navigation techniques. Although he had never come into contact with magic alchemy warships, he got the hang of it very quickly after coming into contact with them. Domitian was not so good. After studying for half a month, he didn't even memorize the magic code. Charlotte asked a few questions and understood that the senior sister was disgusted with the old leopard man for not being able to command the magic alchemy warships, so she only sent Domitian to support. However, he didn't need high-end technology, as long as he could fight, and the old leopard man came at the right time. Charlotte didn't think that Andreas could think of it. The army of Sedona City did not attack, so there must be something wrong. According to common sense, Andreas's inference might really be true. But the problem is that Charlotte didn't play according to common sense. Not only did he have no problems, but he also had an old leopard man. Andreas broke into Sedona alone at night and went straight to Charlotte's mansion. He thought, if the golden goat Rolf was not there, he would kill Charlotte in one fell swoop, resolve the battle here, and launch a large-scale attack on South Seraph. After taking over South Seraph, they could attack Behemoth. After taking down Behemoth, it would only take more than 10 days of rapid march from this principality to approach the outskirts of Strasbourg. In terms of strategy, Andreas's idea was fine. It's just that he took the wrong first step. Andreas jumped onto the courtyard wall, and with the induction of the holy steps, he quickly found the old leopard who was eating and drinking. Charlotte kept urging him to drink and pick up food, showing the tradition of earthling hospitality to the fullest. The old leopard talked a lot, talking about the disputes within the Orc Assassin League, the future of the orcs, and the theory of Septimius the non-cannibal. Although the old leopard man is a master assassin, he does not love killing people. Instead, he has a compassionate mentality and always wants to lead the orcs to the path of light. Domitian took a sip of wine and couldn't help saying, "Do you think the orcs have a future?" Charlotte has a high civilization from the earth. He has seen countless political systems, various philosophical speeches, and various solutions to disputes. The old leopard man has been thinking hard and can't solve the problem. For him, it's just a matter of 1 or 2 words. He smiled slightly and said, "The future of the orcs does not lie in whether they can integrate into humans or be accepted by humans, but in having their own civilization. If you want civilization, you must vigorously develop education. The 5 empires have strict education systems and have cultivated countless talents, but the orcs are still in the form of tribes, and education is still a backward system of teaching by elders. As long as this method does not change, the orcs have no future." Charlotte spoke eloquently, and every word she said was very reasonable and pointed to the current situation. Domitian felt more and more that Charlotte was an extraordinary person. Although he was only a mid-level extraordinary person now, he would be promoted to the same status as himself sooner or later. Suddenly, he had an idea and said, "Some orcs don't like the sea and don't want to live on the ocean, but they actually believe in the doctrine of not eating people. If I hand them over to you, are you willing to take care of them?" Charlotte couldn't say that he had any favorable impression of the orcs, but he believed in the same theory very much, that is, backward areas need education, and many problems can be solved by education, but all kinds of economic means are completely useless. Reality has proved that as long as education keeps up and civilization develops, many backward places can gradually develop. But if we don't make great efforts, or even invest violently in education, force backward areas to learn, and only use universal morality, no matter how many resources are invested, it will be a waste. There is no pure economic aid on the earth, and finally save a country. Charlotte is very welcome to the orcs who believe in the doctrine of not cannibalizing people. Although he has had frictions with the Orc Assassins League, this group of orcs is the easiest to get along with, the most civilized in thinking, and the combat effectiveness is strong enough. Charlotte was about to agree when she heard the cry of a phoenix. A key locked onto herself. She couldn't help but exclaimed, "There's an assassin." Then he thought, when it comes to assassination, Domitian is the expert. With the old leopard around, why should he worry? Andreas had just made a move when he saw the ordinary-looking old man next to Charlotte suddenly grow hair on his face and turn into a leopard man, rushing up at a speed faster than him, with a magic rapier in his hand generating a momentum like a surging sea. Andreas was horrified and cried out inwardly, "How come there is another saint?" He spat out a mouthful of blood after exchanging one move with the old leopard man. In terms of strength, Domitian is actually not as good as the golden goat Rolf, but he is the leopard man who is best at speed, and he is also a master killer, and his speed is unparalleled in the world. Andreas is best at speed, but it happens that Domitian's speed is even faster than his, and he can completely defeat the youngest saint of the Black Phoenix dynasty, so he can achieve such a result. After suffering a great loss in one move, Andreas did not dare to stay any longer, and flew into the sky, fleeing to Chloe's camp. Domitian smiled coldly and said, "If I let you escape, I, Domitian, will change my surname to Mecklen from now on." He chased after him calmly. As soon as Andreas left the city, he was caught up by the old leopard man. The two exchanged a move, and Andreas spat out a large mouthful of blood again. Domitian was like an old cat playing with a mouse. He was leisurely and let Andreas escape a distance each time before attacking with all his strength. Andreas was stopped by the old leopard man 7 times. After receiving 7 swords, he felt that his energy was exhausted and he could not hold on for a few more moves. He was horrified and regretted not listening to Chloe. What was wrong with Sedona City? It was simply a den of dragons and tigers. He sensed that the old leopard man had caught up with him again, and hurriedly landed on the ground. Domitian's speed was still faster than his. Fighting in the sky would be a disadvantage. It would be better to fight steadily on the ground and get some leverage. Domitian let out a long roar, and his magic sword pierced the sea, generating a huge force like the sea water. Just as he was about to kill the young man with a sword, he heard a sharp roar, and a middle-aged man in military uniform punched him from the air, and fighting spirit lingered around his body, turning into colorful feathers. Domitian couldn't help but shout, "Momsen! Are you here to be a nanny for Constantine's son?" Due to his age, Andreas did not recognize this top killer of the Orc Assassin League, but as an assassin who traveled across the New and Old Worlds, how could Domitian not know the saint rank of the Black Phoenix dynasty? This officer named Monson was Constantine's deputy. The old leopard man was not afraid of Monson, but if Constantine was also nearby, he knew that he would definitely not get away with it. Domitian was used to being a killer and never fought a battle without confidence. He used his magic sword and fought hard with Monson's fist, then took advantage of the situation to retreat and disappeared in a flash. Andreas escaped from Sedona with great difficulty and was almost killed by Domitian on the way. When he saw his father's deputy at this time, he couldn't help but feel relieved and shouted, "Uncle Monson, why don't you chase him and kill him?" Monson didn't say anything. After a moment, he whispered, "I'm no match for him." Andreas was horrified and said, "Who is this old man?" Monson said lightly, "One of the 3 holy leaders of the Orc Assassin League, the leopard god Domitian." Andreas took a long breath and said, "Did the Orc Assassin League defect to Fars?" Monson said, "Byron instigated the Orc army to attack Strasbourg and promised to send out a blood ancestor, But the orc army did not wait for the blood ancestor and was killed miserably by the holy ranks of Fars. Not many of the hundreds of thousands of orcs could return alive. It is possible that they felt they were deceived and defected to Fars. Andreas was shocked and said, "I met another holy rank a few days ago, and his strength was even higher than Domitian." Monson had no expression at first, but he was also shocked when he heard it, and said in horror, "In the Orc Assassin League, only Septimius the Non-Eater is stronger than Domitian. The other Orc Holy Rank leader is only about the same as Domitian. If that's the case, the Orc Assassin League must have defected to Fars. Sedona is not an ordinary battlefield at all. It should be the main attack direction of the Fars people." Andreas was horrified and shouted, "I know why they are sitting still and not breaking through Chloe's camp. With Chloe here, we won't notice that the Fars people are mobilizing more saints. They are waiting for more manpower to give us a thundering blow. I suggest that Father bring the soldiers here. Only Father can stabilize the situation here. If Charlotte were here, she would definitely be panicked, because if Viscount Constantine rushes to Sedona, this will not be a tacit war, but the main battlefield for the fight between several major empires. His Knights of Favonius will definitely be defeated at the first opportunity." Andreas and Monson talked for a few words, and both of them believed that the Orc Assassin League must have defected to Fars. Although they had heard of Charlotte's reputation and knew that he was a rising star in the Fars army and had outstanding military exploits, they did not think that Charlotte could mobilize more than 2 holy ranks. How is this possible? Only the Emperor of Fars, Julius Axel VI, can mobilize the holy ranks at will. The two left Sedona in a hurry, preparing to report the news, hoping that the Black Phoenix dynasty would pay attention to this intelligence. Half an hour later, the old leopard man came back, smiled embarrassedly, and said, "This young man ran so fast, and he had a helper to pick him up, and I couldn't kill him." Charlotte expressed regret for not being able to kill Andreas, and said, "Next time, let the old goat cooperate with you. You two will definitely be able to kill him together." Toomey kindly said, "Both of us have been famous for decades. Any of us has practiced longer and has been famous longer than this young man. It's too shameless to join forces. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 311: The Opening of the Meat Grinder. The old goat was actually there the whole time, but he was dumbfounded and did not react to Andreas' assassination. If the old leopard was not there, he would definitely take action. After all, they had signed a master-servant contract, but with the old leopard there, he had no interest, and Charlotte would not die anyway. Charlotte thought that with the golden goats Rolf and Domitian, Sedona would definitely be safe, but she did not know that Andreas came over and deduced an extremely important piece of information, which stirred up the war situation in Sedona. Even if Huge Liang traveled to another world, he could not have guessed that the youngest saint of the Black Phoenix dynasty was so neurotic. On the third day after Andreas' assassination, 2 saints came to Chloe's camp. One was Constantine's deputy Monson, and the other was Baron Dacus of the Empire. When the 2 men were floating in the air and observing Sedona, although Charlotte realized it a little later, she still realized that something was wrong. 3 saints came to the small town of Sedona in South Serif. Charlotte quickly made the same judgment as Andreas, that the Black Phoenix dynasty was going to launch a war in this direction. However, he and Andreas were completely different people. Andreas concluded that Fars would attack in this direction, so he reported it to the military of the Black Phoenix dynasty and asked for more reinforcements. Charlotte had previously judged that Andreas appeared by chance, so she asked Mendelman for help, but when he judged that the Black Phoenix dynasty might launch an attack in this direction, he immediately decided to withdraw from Sedona without any hesitation. He said to the golden goat Rolf, "You also go up to the sky and don't fight with the other side." At the same time, he said to Domitian, "Please also float to the sky and confront the other side's saints, but there is no need to fight. I want to withdraw the Knights of Favonius." Domitian didn't quite understand. The old leopard man asked, "The old goat and I have joined forces. The 2 guys on the other side are no match. Why should we retreat?" Charlotte whispered, "Is this how you orcs fight? No wonder the Battle of Strasbourg wiped out all the elite orcs. Now the other side only has 2 saints. They are no match for you and Rolf, but what if the other side continues to reinforce? Charlotte mentioned the Battle of Strasbourg, which made Domitian look very unhappy. The old leopard man replied, "We can talk about it then." Charlotte sighed and said, "It will be too late by then. It is difficult to surround and kill the saints. Everyone can fly all over the sky. Unless the speed difference is too great and the strength is extremely different, they can always escape." Domitian had the advantage in speed and strength, and with the sea walk in his hand, Andreas still managed to hold on until Monson appeared. Even in the worst case, Sedona was tightly besieged. Domitian, as a master assassin, could easily escape. Charlotte could probably get away with the power of the labyrinth and the infinite mirror world, but the Knights of Favonius could not leave, and he was reluctant to give up this little fortune. Charlotte argued with the old leopard for a few sentences, and knew that Domitian could not understand why she wanted to leave without a fight, so he simply did not explain and just gave orders. Although the old leopard did not understand, he still floated into the sky and looked at the two saints of the other side from a distance. Charlotte's prestige in South Seraph was extremely high. When the residents of Sedona heard that the Knights of Favonius were going to retreat, they were reluctant to leave this army that only fought and did not disturb the people, and they all went out of their homes to keep them. Charlotte ordered the troops to leave faster, and at the same time, she loudly announced, "The army of the Black Phoenix dynasty may come at any time, and our Knights of Favonius are not enough to protect the people of Sedona. If we fight a decisive battle here, the people of Sedona will inevitably be dragged into the war, with heavy casualties. This is something I absolutely do not want to see, so we will give up Sedona and strive for a decisive battle in the wild." An old man shouted, "Why can't the Knights of Favonius stay in Sedona to protect us?" Charlotte shouted, "Because they can't protect us. We are just a knight group that was transferred from the local army, and we are not good at frontal combat. The Black Phoenix dynasty will continue to reinforce, but we have no reinforcements and can't fight this battle at all." Immediately, someone shouted, "Why don't we call for reinforcements?" Charlotte sighed and did not answer. "Why are there no reinforcements? Who will reinforce?" South Seraph officially rebelled against Fars and threw himself into the arms of Byron. Now South Seraph's restoration army is still fighting hard for the Byron Empire in Felendon, fighting with Fars's army. Can they still count on the reinforcements from Fars? Or from Braun? Not to mention whether Braun has the spare power to dispatch a troop. Even if the Bran people have the ability, why would they protect Lady Nansara? As traitors, the Bran people look down on Lady Nansara. Besides, the reputation of the vampires in Bran is quite average. The orcs believe that a blood ancestor would appear, and fought a fierce battle with Fars in Strasbourg. As a result, the whole army was wiped out, and several saints died. Hundreds of thousands of elite warriors will not be able to recover for decades. Charlotte can understand the panic of the residents of Sedona. They were fighting a tacit war, but suddenly the army defending the city was about to withdraw, and they had no one to protect them. But he would never defend Sedona because of these residents. Because it was meaningless. There was a blood feud between the Nansaraphs and the Behemoths, and both sides wanted to massacre each other. But the Black Phoenix dynasty and South Seraph have no hatred. If the Knights of Favonius withdraw and the Black Phoenix dynasty army moves in, almost no one will die. But if the two sides go to war in Sedona, at least 10% to 20% of the city's population will die, and the war will always affect civilians. Charlotte believes that no matter how he explains it, the residents of Sedona will not accept it. They can only accept that the Knights of Favonius will guard Sedona to the death, and it doesn't matter how many soldiers of the Knights of Favonius die. No matter how high Charlotte's prestige is, it's useless. This is human nature. Suddenly someone shouted, "What's the difference between you and those behemoths? You abandoned us when you were in danger." Charlotte still had enough patience to explain, saying, "Fighting in Sedona is just tying up innocent civilians like you and bearing the flames of war together." Even though Charlotte had the knowledge of two worlds, he could not suppress the surging public opinion after arguing for a while. He changed his mind and said loudly, "If anyone is worried that the Black Phoenix dynasty's army will hurt you, you can go with us. I will pay for all the travel expenses, food and lodging, and provide protection." When Charlotte shouted this, the residents of Sedona finally boiled. Many people wanted to go with the Knights of Favonius. The number of people who signed up enthusiastically almost reached half of Sedona. Charlotte did not expect that there would be so many people willing to flee with him, but he did not want to be Liu Zuand. With so many people on the road, he must make all preparations. He announced one thing on the spot: "We are escaping, not moving, so try not to carry anything and travel light." The Knights of Favonius will take care of your food and lodging along the way. If you are reluctant to part with your belongings, such as houses, land, and furniture, and are afraid that they will be damaged if left behind, you can sell them to the Knights of Favonius, and we can buy them back when you return in the future. I am willing to trade in cash, using acres, fours, and centimos to buy everything that cannot be taken away. Of course, this is a war, and the price will not satisfy you. You can also choose not to sell. Charlotte is very rich, but the Golden Goat Rolf and the old leopard Domitian, who were confronting the two saints of the Black Phoenix dynasty in the sky, could not understand Charlotte's behavior. In their opinion, this was womanly kindness. Domitian couldn't help but mutter, "Charlotte is rich." The old goat's mouth twitched, his heart was bleeding, and he secretly said, "That's all my money. He just squandered my money like this? How much are those rags worth?" It's a sin to give écus, fortes, and centimes to these ordinary people. Charlotte's nature is different from that of the people in this world. The society he was born in is commercial, and money needs to circulate to be valuable. The items purchased by Charlotte will be transported to other cities, such as Cappadocia and St. Michael's City, and may even be sold to other places through merchant ships. The residents of Sedona will see the money, and no matter which city they go to, they will give priority to buying the products provided by Charlotte. After the circulation, the wealth will increase. Countless residents of Sedona City threw out a large number of various supplies in exchange for cash, and then left with the Knights of Favonius. Charlotte really kept his promise and arranged for all these residents to retreat to the Principality of Behemoth. Some people were even arranged to go to Cappadocia and even St. Michael's Island. Those who didn't want to leave at first couldn't help but be moved when they saw so many people leaving, and followed everyone to leave. Charlotte didn't expect that the situation would turn out like this. As more and more Sedona residents chose to leave, his Knights of Favonius could not leave. There must be a force to maintain order, otherwise these people would immediately become chaotic and cause unbearable consequences. Constantine's deputy Monson and Barondacus of the Black Phoenix dynasty originally just wanted to observe the situation in Sedona City so that they could formulate strategies. They knew that there were Golden Goats Rolf and Domitian in the city, and they didn't think about attacking. But the two didn't expect that soon after they floated in the air, the army of Sedona began to retreat, and then the residents of Sedona also began to retreat. Neither of them understood what kind of strategy this was. However, there were two saints whose strength was far higher than theirs on the opposite side. Monson and Barondacus acted rashly. The two quickly returned to the barracks and did not discuss military affairs with Chloe. They wanted to wait for follow-up support. The military sense of these two people was obviously very insensitive. 3 days later, when Andreas brought his knights to Sedona, the city was almost empty. Because the old goat and Domitian were behind, Monson and Barondacus did not pursue them. For the two of them, it was effortless to get a city, so why bother to fight? When Andreas arrived at the front line and heard about this, his face changed immediately and he shouted, "They are clearing the fields, they want to move all the people and all the supplies. This must be the meat grinders selected by the Fars Empire. They want to consume our Black Phoenix dynasty's army here." When Andreas shouted this, even Chloe felt that it seemed possible. If the two armies planned to fight for a long time, they would definitely evacuate the local residents. These residents would inevitably consume a lot of supplies in their daily lives, and the army had no way to provide these supplies. Charlotte's evacuation of the residents of Sedona was just a temporary small move, but in the eyes of the commander with rich military experience, it was definitely a precursor to a big move. As the commander of the front line, Chloe didn't care about other people's opinions. After confirming that Sedona had become an empty city, he entered the second largest city in the South Seraph region without hesitation. He and Charlotte Mecklin had been fighting for several months, but this was the first time that they could actually capture the city guarded by the other party, rather than occupy it in the documents of both parties. As Andreas continued to write letters to the rear to explain his views on the front line, the royal family and ministers of the Black Phoenix dynasty also felt that Fars might indeed launch a large-scale battle in South Seraph, and quickly approved the plan to increase troops. Charlotte led the Knights of Favonius to retreat to the small town of Interlaken. After staying there for a few days, the army of the Black Phoenix dynasty came again. He gave up the city without hesitation and continued to retreat to the rear. Because of the previous war, the original residents of Interlaken had almost dispersed. The residents who returned later were afraid of war, so they retreated with him. When Charlotte left, Of course, she took all the supplies with her. The two sides seemed to have a tacit understanding. One retreated silently, while the other advanced slowly, constantly occupying the city. Soon the flames of war spread all over South Serif. However, this time, it was not the behemoths who attacked, but the army of the Black Phoenix dynasty. Charlotte also kept sending official documents to Strasbourg, describing the situation here. He didn't know how Strasbourg would react. He just tried his best to make this sudden war not affect the lives of ordinary residents, but how could it not affect them? Charlotte kept evacuating people and supplies to the rear. The Black Phoenix dynasty army that invaded South Serif could not replenish supplies on the spot, so they soon used some rough means. Every day, dozens of South Serif women were hanged by the Black Phoenix dynasty army because they refused to hand over the last bit of rations. Charlotte was helpless. At this time, there were more than 5 saints in the army of the Black Phoenix dynasty. Domitian and the Old Go tried their best, but they could only barely contain them and could no longer fight back. Just when the Knights of Favonius were about to retreat to the territory of the Principality of Behemoth, Charlotte suddenly received intelligence from the rear that 2 knights had rushed over from the front line. The army was led by his old acquaintances, Claire Bredini and Abner Sumini. Charlotte was not happy to hear this news. Although the two were very powerful and both were great knights of the 18th rank, it was obvious that they could only give up their lives in a battle dominated by the holy ranks. He sent a messenger to deliver the information to the two, and also hoped that Claire Bredini and Abner Sumini would not continue to advance and retreat first. Charlotte soon received a letter from Claire, telling him not to worry, they would be here soon, which made Charlotte very anxious, and he sent out several letters in succession. When Charlotte crossed the border between South Serif and Behemoth, he was caught up by the army of the Black Phoenix dynasty. What made him most desperate was that the 5 holy ranks of the Black Phoenix dynasty were all there, and it was obvious that they were ready to fight a decisive battle here. Charlotte didn't know that the army of the Black Phoenix dynasty had long wanted to surround and annihilate him, but he was too slippery, like a fish swimming, always swimming in the gaps of the army. The army of the Black Phoenix dynasty chased him all the way, and it was really difficult to catch Charlotte's tail. Charlotte knew that at this time, he could only hope that the Golden Goat Rolf and Domitian could turn the tables. He didn't dare to continue retreating. He set up his formation on the spot and adopted a defensive iron barrel formation that the Knights of Favonius were best at, preparing to fight with the army of the Black Phoenix dynasty. As soon as the two sides formed a confrontation, 2 knight groups rushed from behind Charlotte. Charlotte originally thought that it was the army of the Black Phoenix dynasty that surrounded his retreat, but soon he found that the 2 knight groups were flying the flags of the Purple Finch and Maple Leaf, and it turned out that Krell and Abner had rushed to the battlefield. Although the friendly forces arrived in time, Charlotte didn't feel that the situation had improved at all. While sending people to invite Krell and Abner, he prepared for the battle. He felt that it was too late to blame the two for coming here. It would be better to work together and fight this battle as well as possible. Andreas slowly took off. He also saw Fars's reinforcements, and he was more convinced that Fars was going to launch a fierce offensive in the South Serif region this time, and the previous retreat was just an attempt to cover up the truth. It is a common phenomenon in this world for a saint to float in the air and observe the enemy. After all, artillery in this world cannot hide a saint, and rifles cannot shoot that far. Charlotte saw it from afar and was about to order the old goat to go up as well, so as not to lose momentum, when she heard a clear and sharp voice shouting, "Andreas! I heard that you are the youngest saint in the Black Phoenix dynasty." A young figure slowly floated in the air, wearing a Fars military uniform, neat and tidy. It was Claire, who had a slight obsession with mysophobia. Charlotte was overjoyed and shouted, "Claire! Have you been promoted to saint rank?" Claire Bredini waved at Charlotte from a distance and said with a smile, "So you asked me to step back, but I chose to move forward. Not only me, but Abner has also been promoted." Charlotte took a deep breath and thought to herself, war is indeed a life of displacement and harm for many people, but there are always heroes who stand out in such turbulent times. Claire and Abner have both been promoted to saint rank, so there is still a fight to be won in this battle. I have to arrange a 4-on-5 tactic. Before he could figure out who should be put in the hard battle first and win first with a local advantage, he heard 2 burning air currents collide in the sky. Andreas didn't say anything nonsense and fought with Claire Bredini. Chapter 312, The only one who can fight against the Saint Order is the Saint Order. Charlotte watched the battle for a while, then realized that she had been with Mendelman for a long time, and could stand on equal footing in front of the four saints. Later, she took the golden goat Rolf as her old servant, but she forgot that Claire Breton would not listen to his orders. Claire Breton was the strongest young knight of the younger generation of Fars after Zimmermann. Now that he was promoted to the saint rank, it was time for him to be arrogant. There was no one in the world who could make people obey. Even if Julius Axel ordered, he might dare to disobey. Claire Breton was born in Hattingen Thunder and Storm University. He studied both thunder and storm breathing methods. He integrated thunder and storm swordsmanship. Although he had just been promoted to the saint rank, he was definitely not the bottom of the saint rank. Andreas was born in the Black Phoenix dynasty. He practiced the phoenix breathing method passed down from his family. His swordsmanship was also top-notch. Every time he made a move, there was a whistle like the sound of a phoenix. After seeing more, Charlotte also knew that it was the sound wave vibration caused by the special method of urging the sword energy to break through the air. The two of them were evenly matched. They fought back and forth in the sky, as fierce as a raging fire. In fact, Andreas, Claire Brittany, Abner Sumai, Mendelman, and Princess May were all considered the new generation, the fully grown young generation. Julian, Ben Lanrock, and Sophia Gallinold all belonged to the next generation, the young generation that had not yet grown up. Charlotte was not counted as one of them. He was over 20 years old, but younger than Claire Brittany and the others. Moreover, he began to slowly advance after crossing over, and was far inferior to these geniuses who had emerged since childhood and advanced as fast as racing. Charlotte was still worried about Krell getting into trouble, so she said to the old goat, "Go up and help Krell, but don't forget it, Mr. Domitian, you and the old goat should prepare. If the Black Phoenix dynasty sends out more than 2 saints, you can fight normally. If they send out 1, Charlotte made a fierce gesture and said, "Let's do it together." Charlotte knew what human relationships were. Krell was fighting with Andreas, and maybe they would have to compete for some titles with qualifier prefixes. If she rashly asked someone to intervene, it would only make Krell Brittany unhappy. But when the Black Phoenix dynasty sent out saints, he asked someone to intercept them, which was purely a show of goodwill. When Charlotte was retreating, she only had the old goat and Domitian, and she didn't know how to mobilize them to form a local advantage. But now that Krell was there was more room for maneuver. Domitian smiled slightly and said, "It's not convenient for me to take action." Charlotte was about to ask why. Then he came to his senses and said, "I was careless. Domitian is an orc. Not long ago, Fars had just fought a great battle with the Orc tribe alliance outside Strasbourg. The orcs suffered heavy casualties, lost countless elite warriors, and several saints were killed. The old leopard man was indeed not suitable to take action. Not to mention whether it was right for him, an orc, to fight for the Fars Empire. It was also a taboo for Charlotte to recruit orcs as subordinates. It was okay to do it secretly. But it was not so good to do it openly. It turned out that Charlotte's subordinates only had her own Knights of Favonius. Who dared to say a word of no? Lord Charlotte Mecklen, when killing people, it was just like killing NPCs, without any mercy. But now there are also the Purple Finch Knights and the Maple Leaf Knights. Even if Claire Brittany and Abner Sumai didn't say anything, their control over their subordinates was not as cruel as Charlotte's. One of the main reasons why Charlotte could easily recruit soldiers from different sources was that all the people who resisted would disappear quietly, disappear without a sound, no one alive, no one dead. Claire and Abner did not have this kind of deterrent power. Charlotte sighed. Although there were more helpers, Claire and Abner were indeed strong enough after being promoted to the saint rank, but many of their plans could not be implemented. But these were all small matters, which was much better than him being surrounded by the army of the Black Phoenix dynasty and waiting to be annihilated. In the battle between Claire and Andreas, both sides tried their best and wanted to kill each other. In addition to the war between the two countries and the real enemies, there was also a competition for honor. Although the thunder and storm were wild, they could not sweep up the Phoenix Ming who got Kengao, but no matter how fast Andreas's swordlight was, he could not do anything to this ball of thunder and storm. While Charlotte was constantly rehearsing the battle and thinking about how to break it, 2 saints of the Black Phoenix dynasty also took off. They were also worried that Andreas would get into trouble. One was Monson, the deputy of Viscount Constantine, and the other was a newly appeared saint named Nicolaio. He was a good friend of Constantine and a middle-aged saint. The most impressive thing about Niccolao was his neatly trimmed mustache. There was a custom of shaving beards in Fars, but trimming beards was very popular in the Black Phoenix dynasty. Just as the two saints of Charlotte took off, Abner was worried about his friends and jumped up. He and Krell were classmates and also graduated from Hattingen Thunder and Storm University. The swordsmanship they learned was exactly the same, and the momentum was extremely huge. The last two saints of the Black Phoenix dynasty could not sit still and took off one after another. The two sides just greeted each other briefly and maintained battlefield etiquette before starting a melee. It was the first time for Charlotte to see so many saints flying in the sky. The 9 saints sometimes joined forces, sometimes fought alone, and each used their skills to change the color of the sky. Only at this time could we see the fierceness of the Golden God Haralf. He was indeed worthy of being the pirate king of the giant whale sea. With a knight's lance, he rolled up the surging waves. Most of the attacks of the 5 saints of the Black Phoenix dynasty were blocked by him alone. The old leopard man couldn't say it was inconvenient at this time, but he didn't attack in the form of a leopard man. Instead, he used the Beast Scout transformation technique and changed into an ordinary middle-aged man, holding the sea and swimming in the sky. Charlotte was enlightened at this moment. The old leopard man could transform into human, which was nothing, but after transforming into human, he couldn't use the bloodthirsty fighting spirit of the orcs. He could still maintain the combat power of the saint, which was amazing. In other words, the old leopard man also learned the swordsmanship of humans and practiced it to the saint level. Charlotte watched the battle for a while and sighed slightly. If she didn't become a saint, she would always be far behind. The biggest advantage of the saint was that it could fly and had high-speed mobility. Perhaps the ultra-long-range burst alchemy rifle mentioned by Jillian could be a threat to the saint, but firstly, the power of the magic-breaking armor-piercing bomb was not enough, secondly, it was too expensive, and thirdly, there were not that many excellent shooters. So far, the only ones who could fight against the saint were the saints. Chapter 313, The Proof of the Overlord and the Proof of the King. The 9 saints separated in the sky and landed on the ground one by one. Charlotte immediately came out and said loudly, "Congratulations to you, Claire, and congratulations to you, Abner. You finally became the Night King." Abner smiled and said, "I didn't become the Night King." Charlotte was slightly surprised. Abner smiled and said, "Claire condensed the 8 Knight certificates into the Certificate of the Overlord and was promoted to the Night King. I took another path. I condensed the 8 Knight certificates into the Certificate of the King." Charlotte suddenly realized and said, "Abner, you are actually the captain of 10,000 knights. When the knight's path reaches the saint rank, although you can be crowned saint, which is commonly known as the paladin, there are 2 branches. One path is the Night King, which takes the path of domineering and exciting, and is unstoppable. The other path is the King's path. As long as you can cultivate a knight group of your own, you can match the momentum of the knight group under your command, improve your strength by several times, and be called the captain of 10,000 knights. Fighting alone, the Night King is extremely powerful, but if he leads the knights general will win every battle. Of course, the Knights General has a characteristic that he is good at defense but not good at attack. The Knights General cannot fly around and maneuver at high speed like the Holy Order. But if the Knights General is given a city and asked to guard it, even several Holy Orders cannot break it. Claire patted Charlotte's shoulder with a very friendly attitude, and said, "We were separated from the main force because of a battle on the battlefield of Fellenden, and were blocked by a vampire saint from Byron. You can't imagine how tragic the battle was at that time. Our men were all killed by that vampire saint, and we were the only 2 left. He played with us like mice, but that vampire saint didn't expect that after he fell into a desperate situation, Abner and I broke through one after another. The 2 of us joined forces and killed the vampire saint. That battle was really refreshing. That was also the closest we were to death. I almost thought that we would never go back to Strasbourg." Claire couldn't help but sigh when talking about this, and it was obvious that he still remembered it vividly. Abner Sumai also smiled and said, "At that time, Claire stood in front of me and said heroically, 'Brother, I'll go first.' It was the first time I saw such a terrible expression on his face. When the 2 talked about this, they all felt lucky to have survived. Charlotte was also happy for them. After all, these 2 saints could be considered as friends. In the future, whether on the battlefield or in the officialdom, they would become his most powerful assistants. Claire Brittany chatted with Charlotte for a few words and asked casually, "How did you find them? The old leopard man had changed his appearance and did not use bloodthirsty fighting spirit, so Claire could not recognize him. The golden goat Rolf was too scary to recognize. Claire had just returned from Philandon and had not received any relevant news. Charlotte shrugged her shoulders and said, "This is a long story. Let's get a few cups of coffee first to cultivate the atmosphere. I will slowly tell you the whole story." Claire laughed and followed Charlotte into his military carriage. Charlotte had someone prepare coffee. He had no shortage of supplies during his march, but it was Claire and Abner who were always short of supplies. After all, Philandon had too many troops, and they were not as good at making money as Charlotte. Charlotte told him in detail that Mendelman was going to attack St. Michael's Island and asked her to be the insider. Of course, he didn't say a word that shouldn't be said. Claire and Abner were both surprised and shouted, "So it's really the Golden Goat Rolf. This pirate leader was actually deceived by you and signed a master-servant contract? He's so unlucky." The old goat and Domitian were also there. The old goat kept a calm face, but kept cursing in his heart. "Why are you still talking about this? Don't I have any face? I am also a saint and the pirate king of the giant whale sea, the leader of the Golden Goat Pirates. At the peak, we had an ancient magic warship, a magic alchemy warship, a St. Michael Island. Damn it, they're all gone now. Charlotte deserves to die. How could there be such a despicable, dirty and vulgar person like him in the world? The 9 righteous gods are unfair. They actually allow people like him to survive in this world." Charlotte smiled. He didn't care about the old goat's criticism. The master-servant's contract had been signed. What did it matter if someone criticized him? Claire glanced at Domitian. Charlotte only said that it was Mendelman who had collected the Saint Order and sent him to help. He did not ask any more questions and said, "Mendelman has finally breathed a sigh of relief. It is really a cause for celebration. I didn't expect that you have a secret base on the 3 islands of Emblema. Thank you very much this time." Charlotte thought to herself, "Why bother? Senior sister is not yours alone." However, Charlotte would never say such a spoiling word. After all, it was too low in emotional intelligence. Claire quickly returned to the serious topic and said, "This time, the Black Phoenix dynasty caught us off guard. The military only had time for me and Abner to rush over, and could not temporarily withdraw more manpower, but we have Abner. They can't break our knights." Charlotte agreed with him. Abner Sumai was the leader of 10,000 knights. As long as he had his own knights, he could withstand the siege of several saints of equal strength. The two sides chatted for a while, and then Claire and Abner returned to their own knights. Charlotte also stayed where she was, and formed a confrontation with the army of the Black Phoenix dynasty. In the next half-month, the two sides fought 7 or 8 battles, with both sides winning and losing. The reinforcements of the Black Phoenix dynasty had not arrived yet, but another reinforcement from Fars had arrived. This reinforcement army did not go to the front line, but first set up a military camp behind Charlotte and his team. The setting of this military camp was very strange, just blocking the retreat direction of the Purple Finch, Maple Leaf and West Wind Knights. Charlotte was very unhappy, but something else happened to make him even more unhappy. The new leader of the Knights sent a high-handed messenger over. The messenger was not particularly rude, but just delivered a verbal message without even a formal document, asking Charlotte to come over to pay a visit. Charlotte did not leave immediately. She sent someone to invite Claire and Abner. But the messenger came back and said that the two had already visited the new leader of the Knights. Charlotte thought for a while, and also took the old goat and Domitian to set off. The new Knights were named after their family, the Ball Knights. The leader was called Cronlove Ball. He had a very good family background and was not very old. He was just under 40 years old. Because he had been in the officialdom for more than 10 years, his position was far higher than that of Charlotte and Claire. Mr. Ball was very impressive. When he arrived at the battlefield, he held a meeting and sent someone to notify the Purple Finch, Maple Leaf and West Wind Knights to let their leaders come. Although Charlotte didn't care, she was not very happy, especially because the Ball Knights barracks just blocked the retreat, which made him a little worried. He always felt that the new Mr. Cronlove Ball wanted to give them a head start. Claire and Abner arrived earlier, and Charlotte was the last one to arrive. Mr. Ball had actually built a temporary wooden house in the barracks. Of course, Charlotte guessed that it might be an extraordinary object, otherwise the construction workers in this world would be too powerful. He passed through 3 floors of halls before finally entering the wooden house. There were only 3 people in the wooden house, as well as some messengers and waiters. Claire and Abner had gloomy faces, and Cronlove, who was sitting in the main seat, had no expression on his face. None of the three spoke. Mr. Cronlove was handsome, but he had a hooked nose and a sinister look in his eyes, which made him look very unhappy. Charlotte greeted everyone and was about to find a seat to sit down when she heard Cronlove, who was sitting in the main seat, say coldly, "This is a meeting that only saints are qualified to attend. Please leave if you are not related." Charlotte's face was very ugly. He stood up and left without saying a word. The Golden Goat Rolf followed without hesitation. He didn't want to follow, but he had signed a master-servant's contract with Charlotte, so he couldn't stay. Domitian also smiled and turned away. The old leopard man didn't need to give face to the nobles of Fars. Moreover, he had been showing his human face recently, and this face could be changed at any time, so he didn't care about Cronlove. Seeing Charlotte turned around and left, and took away two saints, Claire couldn't help but smile slightly, gave Abner a look, and also stood up and left, also without saying hello. Abner, of course, had to go forward and retreat with Claire, and he said, "Wait for me." Cronlove looked at the empty wooden house, his face suddenly turned livid, and angrily punched the table, and the whole solid wood table was instantly shattered. But even if he was angry, he couldn't vent it on Charlotte. At this moment, Charlotte Mecklenburg had already walked out of the barracks of the Ball Knights. He looked back and thought, "I'll root him out tonight." As soon as Charlotte walked out of the barracks, she heard Krell calling out from behind, "Charlotte, you have such a bad temper." Charlotte saw that Krell and Abner had caught up with her, and couldn't help laughing. "I'm already good-tempered for not turning against him in person and stripping his beard. What does this guy do? Such a big show?" Abner chuckled and said, "He has a higher position than us and wants to be the commander-in-chief of the battlefield." Charlotte looked back at the barracks and said, "Forget about the commander who can set up a barracks to block the rear of the friendly forces." Charlotte traveled through time and met nobles who were all good, but it's not that she hasn't met bastards before, but this is the first time she has met such a thing. In theory, Cronlove is the norm in the officialdom of major empires. Claire spread his hands and said, "He might want to report to the central government office and the royal family. We shouldn't have any problems, but you have to be careful. Charlotte, you don't have a family after all." Claire's words were meaningful. Charlotte certainly had a family, but the Mecklen family was just an ordinary business family. His father and brother were ordinary businessmen. When Charlotte first came here, she thought that as long as she survived a few years and her parents passed away, she could part ways with her brother's family and never have any contact with them until she died, so as not to be discovered. But now, he has too many flaws and it doesn't matter anymore. Such an ordinary merchant family can hardly help Charlotte. The difference between having a family or not in politics is the difference between helping with the flow and risking everything. Suppose there is a big shot who values Charlotte. When Charlotte is in trouble, if he can solve the problem with a little effort, he will definitely not mind helping. But if he needs to pay a huge price or even gamble his own fate, he will definitely stand by and watch. This is also what Krell meant. If it is not a big help, Krell will also help, but sometimes, he is powerless. Charlotte smiled and said, "I believe Mr. Bull will not be so stingy," but what he thought in his heart was, "We are fighting. He is also fighting internally. I am so anxious that I will kill this bastard." He now knows that the strength of the Golden Goat Rolf is quite powerful among the saints. He does not believe that Cronlove is so powerful. As long as there is a suitable opportunity, the old goat will personally take action and there is a chance to kill Mr. Bull. However, Charlotte can't do anything about this matter for the time being. He can't turn against and kill people because of such a small matter. When he returned to the barracks, he decided to solve the problem of blocked retreat first. Charlotte would definitely not do it himself, but after fighting so many battles, he had accumulated some experience. Charlotte chose to move forward to the position of the Knights of Favonius, and even ran to the side and rear of the Black Phoenix Dynasty's army, forming a triangular encirclement with Krell and the Ball Knights. His position was quite close to the Purple Finch and Maple Leaf Knights, but very far away from the Ball Knights, which was equivalent to leaving the Ball Knights alone to face the Black Phoenix Dynasty's army alone. Charlotte's move frightened the Black Phoenix Dynasty's army. After studying it, several saints believed that Fars had received powerful reinforcements and planned to attack them here. Andreas strongly suggested that they raid one of the enemy's armies tonight to break the encirclement first. The direction of Charlotte's new military camp made these Black Phoenix Dynasty saints almost unanimous, that is, to go against the grain and defeat the current new knights first. The reason why they chose to defeat the Bal knights first was at least 7 or 8, but in short. Chapter 314, The 5 Saints Besiege Cronlovbal. Cronlovbal spent a whole day in the military camp scolding Charlotte, Krell, Abner, and 2 saints whose names he could not remember. When he learned that South Seraph would become the main attack direction of the Black Phoenix dynasty, he tried his best to become the supreme commander of the new battlefield, but the result of his activities was not ideal, and he was replaced by another noble with a deeper background. Cronlovbal retreated to the second best, wanting to rush to the front line first, and control other knights, and undermine the noble who was destined to be late. He was quite polite to Krell and Abner, and even put on the style of an old senior. He also graduated from Hattingen Thunder and Storm University, but he was not so polite to Charlotte, and planned to give her a show of strength. Cronlovbal even informed Krell and Abner before Charlotte arrived, but Krell strongly opposed it, and it was not very pleasant. Cronlovbal always thought that as long as he won over Claire and Abner, a mere 25th rank 5th level general affairs officer who had not yet stepped into the insurmountable class could be easily manipulated. He also did not believe that Claire would fall out with him for Charlotte. After all, Charlotte was not of noble birth, and her resume was very clean. She was the child of a small merchant family in Seagull City, without any noble background. Charlotte had the lowest status, and she dared to be late? Cronlovbal decided at that time to indulge his temper and gave Charlotte a big embarrassment. He originally thought that Charlotte would fight back. If she was more humble, she could give the other party a small concession for Claire's sake, but she must let the other party know who has the final say on the front line. Cronlovbal did not expect that Charlotte turned around and left without saying a word. As for the other 2 saints, they actually followed and left, which was beyond Cronlovbal's expectations. In this world, the status of the saints is extraordinary. Except for very few cases, they are higher than most ordinary people, even higher than some nobles. Only ordinary people have ever obeyed the saints. How could the saints obey ordinary people? But what he could not imagine was that Claire and Abner also left. Claire did not even say a word and did not give any explanation. Cronlovbal's anger could burn half of Strasbourg. He just couldn't figure out why Charlotte dared to embarrass him. Why did the 2 saints leave with a mere ordinary person? Why would Claire and Abner rather not give him face and support this guy named Charlotte? Cronlovbal was only angry and didn't pay attention to Charlotte's moving of the barracks. As a family knight order, the Bal knights were stuffed with a bunch of relatives and never valued talent. No one could think of the reason why Charlotte did this. What's more, Cronlovbal was angry. Who would touch his bad luck? In a blink of an eye, it was time for dinner. After taking a few bites, Cronlovbal felt that the food was not tasty, so he smashed the tableware, called the chef to his presence, and asked his personal soldiers to hang him. After hanging the chef, he asked someone to make another meal, which barely vented his anger. While eating, Cronlovbal was thinking about how to write a document to kill Charlotte. In a flash, he had made up dozens of charges against Charlotte, from colluding with foreign countries, colluding with spies, to robbing women, levying heavy taxes, collecting taxes that should not be collected, and countless moral slander, such as seducing the wife of an officer under his command. He was determined to bring Charlotte to ruin. After dinner, Cronlovbal called a clerk in to dictate his thoughts. Halfway through, he heard a shrill cry outside the barracks, "Enemy attack!" He hurried out of the wooden house with the army and saw 5 saints floating in the sky. He couldn't help but feel scared. He didn't even have a second thought in his mind. He rushed into the sky and fled in the direction of Strasbourg. Andreas had already predicted his choice. He let out a clear phoenix cry and stopped Cronlovbal in a flash. In terms of speed, the body movement cultivated by the Phoenix general breathing method was comparable to that of a saint-level extreme flyer. The 2 fought for only a few moves, and Cronlovbal wanted to get rid of Andreas and had no intention of fighting. But at this time, Monson and Baron Dacus, Niccolio and another saint level also caught up, and an astonishing scene appeared. The 5 saint levels besieged Cronlovbal. Cronlovbal had never thought that he would fall into such a desperate situation. When he was young, he still had some heroic spirit, otherwise he would not have been promoted to the saint rank. But after being promoted to the saint rank, he indulged in a life of luxury, eating, drinking and having fun, and his cultivation became more and more relaxed. The last time he practiced swordsmanship was a few months ago. He had a hard time fighting against the 5 saints of the Black Phoenix dynasty, one-on-one. How could he stand up to 5? He was in a hurry to resist for a few moves, and was hit in the back by a punch from Monson. He spurted out a mouthful of blood, and his swordsmanship revealed a big flaw. Baron Decus shot off one of his thighs. After being injured continuously, Kronlofball became more panicked. Andreas took advantage of the situation and pierced his back with a sword. The youngest saint of the Black Phoenix dynasty raised his hand and slashed the head of the Fars noble, causing his brain to burst. The 5 great saints did not expect that it would be so easy to kill this saint from Fars. The previous battles between them and Krell, Abner, Old Goat, and Domitian were very difficult. Domitian did not put in much effort to hide his identity, but the other 3 were all very powerful, especially the Golden Goat Rolf. He was a genuine old-fashioned saint who had roamed the Sea of Giant Whales for decades. He was not comparable to the new saints like Krell and Abner. Andreas said, "We should not stay for long. The other 3 knights may reinforce at any time. I don't know if there are other powerful people lurking in Fars." "Don't worry about the knights below," the other 3 saints agreed. After all, in the battles between empires, ordinary soldiers are cannon fodder, and only saints are the main force of the battle. There is no point in defeating the Baal knights below. They have already killed the opponent's saint leader, so they should retreat quickly. The place where they killed Kronlofball was already 100 miles away from the Baal Knights' camp. The ordinary soldiers of the Baal Knights didn't know that their commander was gone. They soon found that the besieging army suddenly retreated, and they were jubilant, thinking that they had repelled the enemy. Charlotte didn't expect that the Black Phoenix dynasty saints would attack so fiercely, and once they went out, they would attack like a lion attacking a rabbit, going all out. Why were there 5 saints working together, and Kronlofball was alone? He didn't expect that Kronlofball was killed after just a few moves. Claire, like Charlotte, didn't expect these either. He didn't even expect that the Black Phoenix dynasty would go all out to attack the Baal Knights. After all, he and Charlotte were nearby and could provide support at any time. After all, Charlotte had no foresight, and didn't know how Kronlofball would deal with him. On the battlefield, he hadn't stood still when seeing his allies in trouble, but he was also afraid that the Black Phoenix dynasty would use a trick to lure the tiger away from the mountain. He sent 2 saints to rescue people, and he was killed by a surprise attack in the blink of an eye. So he personally led a combat team, took the Golden Goat Rolf to attack, left the Old Leopard to guard the barracks, and was ready to support at any time. Charlotte's reaction can only be described as mediocre. In ordinary situations, he can deal with it, but when he encounters an enemy with a lot of tricks, he may be calculated. Claire's reaction was more professional than his. He and Abner did not go to rescue Kronlofball at all, but used both knights to attack the Black Phoenix dynasty's barracks directly. Like Charlotte, he believed that the Black Phoenix dynasty's saints would not be all dispatched. Although Claire tried his best in this attack, he did not think of taking risks. Instead, he planned to meet more than 3 saints, so he quickly went to Charlotte for help and let his 2 saints take action. However, Claire Bradini did not expect that he would not encounter any resistance at all, and he destroyed the Black Phoenix dynasty's army in one breath. When he occupied the enemy camp, he did not feel the joy of victory. His heart trembled, and he cried out inwardly, "Not good, they did not leave the holy ranks, nor did they attack us Purple Finch and Maple Leaf. They are either going to attack Charlotte Mecklin or Kronlofball." Claire Bradini led the 2 knights without hesitation to rescue Charlotte. After all, Charlotte was closer to him and was Anne's boyfriend. When the Old Leopard heard that the army was approaching, he rushed out of the barracks and saw Claire. He was still a little confused, which showed that this place was not attacked. Of course, he knew the action target of the Black Phoenix army, and shouted, "Come with me to rescue Charlotte." The Old Leopard had not yet reacted, so why did he have to rescue Charlotte? But he still followed Claire. After all, Domitian had traveled the New and Old worlds for many years and had a lot of experience. When he encountered something he couldn't figure out, he listened to the words of smarter people. Halfway through, Domitian finally realized that the 5 saints of the Black Phoenix dynasty were not on the military camp, nor did they attack the West Wind, the Purple Finch, and the Maple Leaf Knights. They must have gone to attack Kronlofball. Charlotte was leading troops to support them and would inevitably run into those people, so he hurriedly accelerated. Domitian's speed was extremely fast, and he quickly rushed to the camp of the Baal Knights, but there was no battle here. Charlotte had just arrived and was still entangled with the people of the Baal Knights. They did not allow Charlotte's people to enter. Halfway through, Charlotte saw the withdrawing Black Phoenix army, But he did not rush up to provoke, but took advantage of the night to avoid them. The Black Phoenix army was eager to return home, and did not entangle with a small army that was obviously avoiding fighting, and the two sides missed each other. Seeing that Charlotte was fine, Domitian hurriedly reported the military situation. Charlotte was horrified, fearing that something might happen to Krell and Abner, so he hurriedly asked him and the Golden Goat Rolf to go to help. Charlotte heard the information Domitian brought, and then he knew that all 5 saints of the Black Phoenix dynasty had been dispatched. He thought to himself, Kronlev Ball may have been killed, or he was driven away, and he is definitely not in the barracks. He returned to the camp of the Ball Knights without hesitation. When he encountered an obstacle again, he kicked the person who blocked his way away. With his 12th order strength, although he was not good enough at the saint level, he could easily crush ordinary supernormals. Charlotte challenged 8 supernormals of the Ball Knights in one breath, broke into the cabin, kicked open the door of the cabin, and saw a clerk holding a few pieces of paper and shaking. Charlotte snatched the clerk, took a closer look, and suddenly a surge of anger rushed up. He didn't know whether Kronlev Ball had really been killed, but he guessed that the other party must be bad. He broke into the military camp just to disgust this guy once, but when he saw that Kronlev Ball had dictated more than half of the document, he looked at the charges on the document, and suddenly he became bolder and ordered loudly, "Control the entire Ball Knights, their leader is gone, I want to recruit the whole army." Charlotte thought viciously in her heart, "Kronlev Ball, you'd better be killed, otherwise I will definitely reward you with death, writing such a vicious document to attack me. If he succeeds, I'm afraid I will have to flee to Ingrima." Charlotte was furious and began to force the soldiers of the Ball Knights to surrender, regardless of whether they were friendly troops. The Ball Knights were the private knights of the great nobles, and there were many generals of noble origin. How could they be willing to listen? Whenever Charlotte encountered someone who refused to listen, she would pull him aside and send him to Cappadocia directly through the spiritual channel. No one knew that Charlotte was not a bloodthirsty, ruthless character, but a kind and gentle person in nature. Most people who saw this scene would think that he had used some extraordinary means to make those who resisted evaporate from the face of the earth. Many soldiers of the Knights of Favonius did not know the truth. They had the same experience. Some kind-hearted soldiers even persuaded the soldiers of the Ball Knights, "Don't be afraid, we have also experienced it. Those who disobeyed will be gone, and those who obeyed will be fine." Some people even said that my neighbor was a stubborn person and I never saw him again. I wish him good luck. The soldiers of the Ball Knights had never seen such cruel means, and their resistance was greatly weakened. By dawn, Charlotte had reorganized the Ball Knights, swallowed up all the supplies brought by Kronlev Ball, and slowly retreated. After returning to the headquarters of the Knights of Favonius, Charlotte made some arrangements. The Knights of Favonius, which had expanded again, learned that Kronlev Ball had a team of carpenters who designed a wooden house that could be disassembled at any time and easily assembled. It was really not an extraordinary thing. Charlotte was amazed and left this team of carpenters to the quick-handed clerks to create a comfortable environment for them to rush to finish their manuscripts. Well, Charlotte's novel has not been dictated yet. At noon, Claire and Abner came to him, covered in dust and tired. When they saw Charlotte, Claire said, "The Golden Goat Rolf and the Saint are still confronting them, and they will retreat after a while. Last night, the battle was really exciting. The 5 saints of our opponent fought fiercely all night." Abner also made a little addition. Both of them felt that this battle was a great victory. After all, they had taken down the Black Phoenix army's lair, occupied the opponent's military camp, and captured thousands of prisoners. The 3 of them just chatted for a while, and the old goat and Domitian also came back. Neither of them looked tired. The Golden Goat Rolf was very powerful, and the old leopard man didn't do much. When Charlotte heard that Claire had captured the Black Phoenix army's camp, her face looked a little strange. He actually also captured a military camp, but it was inconvenient to say it, not even to Claire. When the 5 were discussing how to proceed, the Black Phoenix army sent an envoy. This envoy was an old acquaintance of Charlotte, Chloe. Chloe brought a wooden box, and when she saw Charlotte, she said, "Please don't be sad, victory and defeat are common in the military." Charlotte thought to herself, "Why should I be sad?" Chloe opened the wooden box, and inside was half a body. The lower half. He whispered, "Andreas accidentally smashed Kronlev Ball's head, so he cut off the upper body to report his merit, and can only return the lower body to you." His sword was left by Andreas. Andreas said that if the Ball family is not convinced, They can send people to Black Phoenix to find him after the war. As long as they win the duel, they can take back the family treasure. Charlotte, Claire, and Abner all had different expressions. Charlotte took a deep breath, and there was only one word jumping around in her heart: cool. The word cool was in her heart. He even patted Chloe and said, "I will give you the bodies of the Black Phoenix soldiers who died in the battle yesterday." Chloe nodded. This is inevitable in war. Outside of war, there are still human feelings. For example, sending back the bodies of enemy soldiers, or allowing their descendants to take away the relics of their ancestors through duels. Claire sighed and said, "We lost." Abner also felt the same way. Although they captured the enemy's base camp, the battle was based on the Battle of the Saints. Fars lost a saint, which was an indisputable loss. The two sides exchanged some things in a friendly and tacit atmosphere. Chloe left half of Kronlovbal's body and took hundreds of corpses back. In terms of quantity, it was definitely a successful diplomacy. Claire only remembered at this time that he should notify the Ball Knights. If the knights were defeated and dispersed, they should also gather soldiers for Kronlovbal. He said goodbye to Charlotte in a depressed mood, returned to his camp, and sent a messenger. In the evening, the messenger came back to report that the Ball Knights' camp had been razed to the ground, nothing was left, and there was no Ball Knight nearby. Claire Brittany was shocked when he heard the news, and the word annihilation came to his mind. He believed that the Ball Knights had been completely wiped out from this world by the Black Phoenix Army. Countless documents flew to Strasbourg in the past few days, including one that Charlotte tampered with the date and disguised as a document sent by the Boer Knights a few days ago. This battle alarmed all the nobles in Strasbourg. Even Emperor Julius Axel was alarmed. Chapter 315, Meeting of the Two Kings. Charlotte, Krell, Abner and the Black Phoenix Army fought a fierce battle. Each suffered losses. Fars lost a saint and destroyed a knight order. The Black Phoenix Army lost almost all of its troops, and the two sides did not start a second battle. The Black Phoenix Army could not maintain the front line because it had no ordinary soldiers, so it could only retreat slowly. Charlotte originally wanted to separate from the Black Phoenix Army and retreat to Behemoth, but Krail Breton could not allow himself to retreat like this, and insisted on pressing forward step by step. Charlotte had no choice but to compromise in the end. After the three knight orders re-entered the South Seraph region, they found that the situation was much better and much worse than they expected. It was said to be much better because the Black Phoenix Army lost the lower-level soldiers and could no longer defend the cities they had captured in the early stage. Every time they retreated to a city, they took away the soldiers who had been stationed there and gave up the occupation. Charlotte and his men recaptured several cities almost without bloodshed. It was said to be much worse because South Seraph began to run out of food. Charlotte evacuated a large number of South Sela women, and also evacuated countless supplies. After the Black Phoenix Army entered the South Sela region, it became more difficult to obtain supplies from the rear, and they could only collect military rations and other supplies on the spot. Of course, the South Sela women were unwilling to sacrifice their hands, and they also wanted to live. The Black Phoenix Army had no good feelings towards the South Sela women and adopted the most brutal suppression. Charlotte felt sad every time she recaptured a city. There were dozens of hundreds of corpses hanging on the walls of almost every city, including men and women, old people and children. They were all South Sela women who resisted and refused to donate food. Even many people were not unwilling to donate, but really had no food. Crying could be heard in every city day and night. Since the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand and the attack by Archduke Joseph who inherited the Duke's throne, South Sela has never stopped fighting, and it was difficult to survive. During Charlotte's reign, because taxation was abandoned and commerce was vigorously developed, the South Sela women could barely maintain their lives. But Charlotte couldn't force himself to do something without rice. He was often not in South Seraph, fighting for his senior sister on St. Michael Island, so the bad situation in South Seraph was not reversed. This time, the Black Phoenix Army came and completely collapsed the fragile economy and the life that was barely maintained in South Seraph. Charlotte had no choice. He couldn't transport food here, because if the war didn't stop and the Black Phoenix Dynasty's army continued to fight, the situation would be worse. The food transported would only enrich the Black Phoenix people, and these ordinary South Seraph people couldn't keep their food. He could only vigorously promote that those who were willing to withdraw Behemoth with him would be responsible for everything by the Knights of Favonius, including food and accommodation, as well as the allocation of land and houses in other cities. The South Seraph women, who were reluctant to leave, were moved by Charlotte's promise. He had a good reputation in South Seraph. With a Black Phoenix army as a comparison, more and more South Seraph people were willing to leave their hometown. Charlotte arranged for these people to go to Cappadocia as much as possible. Cappadocia is located on the island of Galling. This island is the second largest island in the Ingrima Empire, but the population is very small. Although there are many mountains, it is not impossible to live there. When these South Seraphs go there, at least they have a place to live, and the trade there is developed, so it is easier to find a job. Soon, the battle line was pushed back to Sedona. However, this time it was the army of the Black Phoenix dynasty that occupied the city. Charlotte's Knights of West Wind, Krell's Knights of Purple Goldfinch, and Abner's Knights of Maple Leaf were outside the city. The army of the Black Phoenix dynasty retreated to Sedona and never retreated again, because Sedona transported countless supplies and was their largest supply base, and they must not give up these supplies. Moreover, they gathered the soldiers who occupied South Seraph and became a powerful army again, so there was no need to retreat any further. The two sides had several tentative battles under the city of Sedona. Claire Brittany and Andreas dueled every day. The duels between the two sides were as frequent as those between Charlotte and Chloe. Charlotte didn't want to confront them here. He didn't know when the reinforcements from the Black Phoenix dynasty would arrive, but he knew they would definitely arrive. It was not certain when the reinforcements from Fars would arrive, and they might not arrive later. But Claire and Abner didn't want to give up the city they had recaptured. They both fought in South Seraph. The last battle was even named after the Brittany offensive. Claire wanted to avenge his previous humiliation and wanted to fight a decisive battle with the Black Phoenix army. Charlotte had no choice but to cooperate with him. All he could do was to quietly withdraw the ordinary soldiers and replace them with maze guards. The maze guards in his hands were part orc warriors and part pirates, and the proportion of extraordinary soldiers was not low, so their combat effectiveness was quite strong. Charlotte didn't even leave Dubin, Anastasia and others behind, and asked them to withdraw to Behemoth. The battle line was deadlocked in Sedona. In a flash, more than 10 days passed. Charlotte was worried every day. Claire, on the other hand, was addicted to fighting with Andreas. He went back to the barracks and closed himself off to think hard, trying to suppress Andreas the next day. On this day, Claire rose as usual. Andreas also took off. Just as the two were preparing to fight as usual, Charlotte saw an unforgettable scene. Countless clouds suddenly floated in the sky in the direction of the Black Phoenix dynasty. These clouds were very strange and alive. Although ordinary clouds also floated slowly, they all seemed to be still when viewed from the ground. If you didn't look closely, you couldn't see that the clouds would move. But these clouds were unpredictable and swept in. They were completely different from ordinary clouds. Charlotte looked at it for a while and couldn't help but exclaimed in surprise, "It's birds. So many birds formed a huge cloud-like monster. What's going on?" Occasionally, huge flocks of birds would appear on Earth, but that was an extremely rare phenomenon. Charlotte didn't believe that this thing would appear near the battlefield for no reason. The old leopard was experienced. After just one look, he said in a lost voice, "That's not a bird, that's someone's fighting spirit, a sign of appearance." Charlotte was shocked and said, "This person's fighting spirit can cover several miles of the sky." Domitian said, "There is only one person in the Black Phoenix dynasty who has such power." This time it was Charlotte's turn to cry out, "Is Viscount Constantine here? How is it possible? How could he come? This person's fighting spirit is so strong, aren't we doomed?" Charlotte was at least a mid-level peak transcendent. How could she not know that if the countless birds were the manifestation of Constantine's fighting spirit, it could only mean one thing, that Krell, Abner, the old goat and Domitian combined would not be this person's opponent. Chapter 316, Charlotte's first meeting with the Count of Brittany. Claire turned around and left without the slightest hesitation. When he landed in the military camp, he found Charlotte and whispered, "We, the Saints, will definitely be targeted by Viscount Constantine and will surely not be able to leave. But you are still a mid-level person. If you leave now, you still have a chance to escape. Go back to Strasbourg and give my parents a message. Just say, Claire Brittany will always love them." Abner Sumri also looked depressed. He handed a cufflink to Charlotte and said, "Please give this to my family too." Charlotte took a deep breath and said, "We are friends. Although I know that at this time, I shouldn't." Claire patted his shoulder and said, "Everyone has his own responsibilities." Charlotte, We know what kind of person you are. It's time for you to leave." Just as Charlotte was about to say a few more words, she heard an ordinary voice coming from a very far distance. "Constantine, your Phoenix General breathing method has been cultivated to the peak, and there is no way forward. You actually played tricks on the meditation method. What's the point of using it to scare young people?" Claire and Abner's faces showed relief for surviving the disaster. The two hugged Charlotte and cried with joy. Claire shouted, "It's my uncle, the Count of Brittany, who is here. We are safe." Abner also patted Charlotte's shoulder hard. This guy was a captain of 10,000 cavalry after all, and his hand was very strong. He almost slapped Charlotte to vomit blood. Fortunately, Charlotte was still strong. Charlotte looked up at the sky and saw a black line cutting through the atmosphere and splitting the sky. Wherever it passed, the whole sky seemed to be divided in half. Although it doesn't look as magnificent as the birds in the sky that merge into dark clouds, in fact, the momentum is not inferior at all, and there is even a sense of pride. The two sides may be hundreds of kilometers apart, but the spirit, will, momentum and killing intent have already fought in the air, which is more exciting than any saint-level battle Charlotte has ever seen. This is the peak battle of the saint level. Countless birds on the sky mountain suddenly stagnated, and then formed a majestic face. This face was unexpectedly young, and it looked only more than 30 years old. Viscount Constantine manipulated the face formed by the birds, hummed softly, shook the atmosphere, and sent a voice far away, "Brittany. Haven't you made no progress in all these years? I heard that you have started to look for suitable weapons. Isn't it a joke that we still need to rely on external objects?" The black line swept straight over the sky of Sedona City, and a handsome and unrestrained middle-aged uncle appeared. He was wearing a noble's ordinary clothes, with a simple style, as if he was walking in his own garden, and his behavior was calm, without any tension. Count Brittany smiled and said, "How did you make yourself look younger? I'm in my 40s. No matter how much I pretend, I can't be really young." Viscount Constantine's face was manipulated, and his voice was slightly low, saying, "It's just some side effects of cultivation." The top masters of the two empires, although they were verbally arguing, had no intention of fighting. Both of them knew that their duel was by no means a simple matter. It might be related to the rise and fall of the two empires. Once someone fell, at least the entire battle line would collapse, and it might even affect the overall situation. Well, the two of them were actually the overall situation. Both of them knew each other well and knew that even if everyone let go of the battle, the winner would not be determined in a short time. This kind of battle was meaningless, so it was better to save some energy. After Viscount Constantine finished speaking these words, the birds in the sky quietly dispersed as they appeared. Count Brittany also landed in the military camp under the city. Charlotte had a feeling that the next thing should be his highlight moment. He was quite nervous. At this moment, Charlotte's attention was all on the Count of Brittany, but in her peripheral vision, she could still see that Krell and Abner both took a step back tacitly and gave the C position to her. These two had no good intentions. Well, let's not talk about friends at this moment. The old leopard manned a mission hid consciously. The golden goat hair elf couldn't hide at all, so he could only stand behind Charlotte. If he had a choice, he would rather kneel down than stand upright. If he had the Queen Bee or St. Michael's Island in his hands, why would the golden goat hair elf be afraid of a mere Count of Brittany? But now the old goat is more than afraid. He's even afraid. The most terrifying thing is that he doesn't know when Charlotte Mecklen will spit out a sentence, go. He will have to pounce on it like a mad dog. But facing the Count of Brittany, only death is waiting for him. And it won't be a peaceful death. As expected, the Count of Brittany ignored everyone. He just walked to Charlotte and asked casually, "Are you the Charlotte that Anne often mentioned to me?" Charlotte wanted to answer, no, but in this situation, he could only bite the bullet and said, "Charlotte Mecklen." "Now," the Count of Brittany said lightly, "don't tell me about your long list of political identities. There are too many words and it doesn't make any sense." Charlotte nodded hurriedly, racking her brains to come up with a sentence. "How is Anne recently?" the Count of Brittany said lightly. "Very well, she often mentions you in front of me." Charlotte suddenly felt that she had asked a very stupid question. And would definitely say good things about him, but the more Anne said so, the more serious the old Earl's rebellious psychology might be. Charlotte wanted to make amends and said hurriedly, "I miss Anne from time to time." The eyes of Count Brittany suddenly turned cold, and Charlotte felt that the whole world dimmed. This kind of pressure was not much less than facing the evil god. After all, the evil god was just a breath, and Count Brittany was right in front of him. Count Brittany said lightly, "Do you think about me or Princess May occasionally? I heard that you generously gave each of them a ship." The sweat on Charlotte's forehead immediately flowed down, and he couldn't stop it. He squeezed out all the wisdom of 2 lives and said something that a virgin dragon could blow loudly. "I think those 2 ships are not worthy of Anne." Count Brittany looked at Charlotte deeply and said, "There are not many young people who can brag so openly in front of me." Claire quietly stepped back half a step. He was the young man who didn't dare to brag openly in the Earl's mouth. Abner Sume also took a half step back, and he too. Both of them could only pray silently for Charlotte. This bull was too big, and they couldn't figure it out. How would Charlotte make it work next? Chapter 317. Only a glorious and immortal history is worthy of Miss Anne de Brittany. Charlotte couldn't think of how to justify this boast. St. Michael's Island was good, but it was in Grimmer's territory. It was fine for him to occupy it, but giving it away would be a bit unreasonable. That divine creature? It was another matter whether it was appropriate to give it away in private, but it was definitely not appropriate to give it away publicly. The other things. Was it to give Anne a chance to summon the evil god? The Count of Brittany would definitely kill him alive. Maybe he was just thinking out of a corner. Or maybe people would do anything when they were desperate. Charlotte said in a leisurely tone, "In this world, even heroes will grow old. Even emperors will age. Even the most powerful will find themselves lonely and embarrassed. Even the most wealthy will leave their owners. No matter how precious the treasure is, there will be a day when it is useless. But there is one thing that can last forever as long as human beings exist. That is civilization." Anne and I have written several novels together, and the quality of these novels is quite good. I believe that even after 100 years, or even 200 years, or even 500 years, there will still be people who read them and remember that these novels were written by a man named Charlotte Mecklen to his favorite girl. I don't know how long your reputation can be engraved in history, but I can assure you that Anne's name will surely be passed down longer than yours, and much longer. In no more than 100 years, maybe 50 years, someone will mention your name and say, "Oh, we know, it's Miss Anne's father." Claire and Abner quietly took another step back. Both knew that Charlotte wrote novels, and they also felt that Charlotte's words were too manly and too romantic. However, the last 2 sentences were too bold. Although both of them silently felt that what Charlotte said might really become a reality, and the pen name Anne Mecklen would indeed be more popular than the Count of Brittany, they also felt that this statement was a bit too exciting. Anyway, they didn't dare to brag about the kind of bragging that Charlotte did. In addition to their limited level, they really couldn't brag about it. Courage is also a very important part. Claire even felt that when he faced Constantine, he might not have the courage that Charlotte had to say when she faced the Count of Brittany. Abner gave his friend a look, which probably meant, "What should I do next?" Claire didn't know what to do. Charlotte thought in a trance that she was a Chinese teacher in her previous life, not a math teacher. He made an impassioned final statement and concluded, "In my mind, no real treasure can be worthy of Anne. Only the cornerstone of civilization of a continent and the glorious and immortal history are worthy of Miss Anne of Brittany." Earl of Brittany took a deep breath and said, "Charlotte Mecklen, you are indeed the boldest young man I have ever met. You can make a set of unreasonable words sound so wonderful, and the most rare thing is that I can't refute it logically." Earl of Brittany patted Charlotte on the shoulder and said, "Do you know how many times I wanted to kill you myself? A full 168 times, the firecool silver rhino in your hand. It was the tool I planned to use to shoot you the first 56 times. I thought at the time that after killing you, this weapon would be useless." Charlotte couldn't help but touch his thigh. Of course, there was no silver rhino on his leg. It had been a long time since he replaced the silver rhino with a rattlesnake. However, he still felt a chill on the back of his neck, as if he had survived a disaster. Count Brittany withdrew his hand, looked in the direction of Sedona City, and said, "Go to Sedona City and help me send a message to Viscount Constantine, saying, if he doesn't do it, I won't do it either." Charlotte agreed and left in a hurry. After walking a long way, cold sweat continued to emerge on his body. Claire and Abner came over and greeted Count Brittany. The two of them had a tacit understanding and never mentioned Charlotte again. Count Brittany treated the 2 juniors much more gently. He rewarded them with a few words, chose a military carriage, and said that except for 3 meals a day, they didn't need to disturb him. Claire said with a lingering fear, "I thought Charlotte might die today." Abner Sume also whispered, "Charlotte is really brave, But what he said is really amazing. The most important thing is that I think his words may really come true. His novels are really good." Claire nodded. He also read Charlotte's novels. Now on the front line of Furlanden and Mecklen's novels have become important strategic materials. Charlotte rushed out of the barracks and thought, should I take the old goat with me? But he immediately realized that he might not be in danger if he was alone, but if he took the golden goat Roth, the saints of the Black Phoenix dynasty would definitely attack the old goat with all their strength. After all, there are not many opportunities to kill the enemy saints, and even Viscount Constantine might do it himself. Charlotte mustered up her courage. She didn't think it took much courage to deliver a message. After all, facing the Count of Brittany was much more dangerous than delivering a letter. Charlotte could sense that the Count of Brittany had also intended to kill her. As for why he didn't do it, it must be because of Anne. There was no other reason. When they arrived at the city of Sedona, Charlotte took a deep breath and shouted, "I'm here to bring a message for the Count of Brittany." As soon as he finished shouting this, he saw Chloe's face. Chloe had a sympathetic look on her face and said on the top of the city wall, "Come into the city." Charlotte hurriedly said, "I'm just bringing a message. I'll leave soon." "There's no need to go into the city," Chloe said. "Viscount Constantine wants to see you." Charlotte's cold sweat, which had just disappeared, came out again. He had already met the Count of Brittany and didn't want to see Viscount Constantine again. This was not a world where you could get rewards for signing in. The Count of Brittany would not kill him for Anne's sake, but Viscount Constantine didn't need to consider anyone's face. What if he wanted to kill him? Charlotte refused repeatedly. Just as he finished telling the reasons he had made up, he heard a serious voice coming from Sedona. "The boy who brought a message to Brittany, come here for a moment. I have something to ask you." Chloe spread her hands and made a helpless expression. Charlotte was the one who was really helpless. He whispered, "I really can't refuse." Chloe said, "What do you think?" If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 318 Lionheart, I send you my warmest regards. Viscount Constantine was indeed very young, just like his face made of birds. When he saw Charlotte, he smiled and said, "Mr. Mecklen, I'm glad to see you, but it's not that I have anything to say, but another gentleman wants to see you." Charlotte was slightly surprised. The person who could make Viscount Constantine come out to help keep guests must be of very high status. He then noticed that there were 7 or 8 people in the living room. In addition to the 5 saints, there was also a man with a high nose and deep eyes, and his eyes were blue. He was very imposing in his every move, and it was obvious that he must have been in a high position for a long time. As for the others, it was obvious that they were not in a good position, such as Chloe. Charlotte believed that the 5 Black Phoenix Saints were definitely not the ones who could make Viscount Constantine come out, and there was no need for them to do so. She said to the man with a high nose and deep eyes, "I wonder what this gentleman wants to talk to me about." The man smiled slightly, stood up and saluted. Charlotte was slightly surprised, because this was the etiquette of the Lionheart dynasty, which was different from the etiquette of Fars and Black Phoenix. As expected, the man introduced himself. "I am Conroy from the Lionheart dynasty. I was originally ordered to go on a diplomatic mission to the Black Phoenix, but I didn't expect to meet you here. However, my identity needs to be kept secret for the time being, so I can only ask Viscount Constantine to come forward and ask you to meet. Please allow me to extend my most sincere greetings to you on behalf of this generation of the Lionheart King." Charlotte always felt that people should not be surprised all the time, but Mr. Conroy's words were too shocking. He hurriedly said, "How does His Majesty Baldwin Asa know me?" Conroy smiled slightly and said, "Your Majesty has the honor of reading the book Charles the Lionheart. I am very pleased that someone has written a biography of Charlemagne, and the text is detailed and respectful of history. I have ordered 500,000 copies from the publisher and donated them to every library in every country in the old world, so that no library will lack this classic work. In the future, we also plan to donate this book to libraries in the New World. My diplomatic mission to the Black Phoenix, like the other envoys, is for Mr. Mecklen." Kang Luo glanced at all the Black Phoenix nobles present and said, "His Majesty Baldwin Asa hopes that no matter what stage this war enters, if you meet Lord Mecklen on the battlefield, please show mercy and don't hurt his life." We, the Lionheart dynasty, are willing to pay a large sum of money to redeem Lord Mecklen. Similarly, His Majesty Baldwin Asa has made the same request on behalf of Miss Anne of Brittany. I have obtained the consent of His Majesty Yanis Hadrian, and I hope you can respect the friendship of the Lionheart dynasty." Charlotte really didn't expect that Mr. Kang Luo would bring her such a huge surprise. He also didn't expect that Princess May's advice to him to praise King Charles the Lionheart more in the new novel would actually yield such a reward. It's just that this reward is too amazing. Charlotte hurriedly returned the greeting and said, "His Majesty Baldwin Asa is so kind to me, Charlotte Mecklen doesn't know how to repay him." Kang Luo smiled and said, "As long as you write a good novel, it will be fine. There is one more thing. His Majesty Baldwin Asa deeply feels that Lord Mecklen's ancestors should also be people of the Lionheart dynasty. It was only because of some unspeakable reasons that they moved to Fars, so he also gave you the status of a formal citizen of the Lionheart dynasty again. I still have the document with me." The same document, the other envoys also brought a copy. His Majesty Baldwin Asa instructed that if they have the opportunity to meet you, they should hand it over in person. If they are not lucky enough to meet you, they must take this document back. Charlotte took the document Kang Luo handed over and found that there were 2 copies. Kang Luo deliberately blinked his eyes and smiled knowingly. Charlotte thought to himself, it's just a formal citizenship, but it's not only mysterious, but also very grand. He put the document in his arms, stayed for a while, relayed the words of the Count of Brittany, and then said goodbye. After all, this is the enemy's camp, and Charlotte didn't dare to stay for long. What's more, he had to face Viscount Constantine, the top master of the Black Phoenix dynasty. The pressure was really great. After leaving Sedona City, Charlotte breathed a sigh of relief. He took out 2 documents and found that only one of them was his own, and the other was for Anne of Brittany. Charlotte did not open Anne's copy, but opened his own copy. It was not a formal citizen's document, but an appointment letter signed by the current Lionheart King, Baldwin Asa. Lord Charlotte Mecklen, with outstanding achievements and excellent moral character, has made irreplaceable contributions to the Lionheart dynasty. She is promoted to the 24th class first-level counselor of the Lionheart dynasty. She is hereby appointed as the Lionheart Palace Book Commissioner and the Cold Spring Palace Literary Advisor. Charlotte held this document and felt her hands trembling. He was always stuck at the 25th class 5th-level General Affairs Director in the Fars Empire, but he was very successful in Ingrima and the Lionheart dynasty. Although they were not important political positions, they were both key positions where they could often see the emperor and even have an impact on the political arena of the 2 empires. Charlotte thought to herself, should I also write something for the founding emperor of Fars? He thought hard, but could not find a suitable target, so he had to give up for the time being. He did think of changing the classic masterpiece of the father of the author of The Lady of the Camellias to please the Count of Brittany. Of course, some small details that were not suitable for Fars must be changed one by one to avoid angering the first master of the Fars Empire. Charlotte took a deep breath, and after returning to the military camp, she immediately went to meet the Count of Brittany. The Count did not embarrass Charlotte, nor did he refuse to see her. He let her get on the military carriage for a temporary rest. This military carriage was just an ordinary style that accompanied the army. The furnishings were ordinary and a bit old. Charlotte thought for a while, quietly put the dark luxury and the document on the small table in the military carriage, and told her everything that happened on the way to Sedona. The Count of Brittany did not speak, but just picked up the document, opened it and read it for a while, smiled slightly, and said, "Anne has not graduated yet. But she has a good job." Charlotte wanted to ask what position the current Lionheart King Baldwin Asa gave Anne, and whether she had a political identity, but she heard the Count of Brittany said lightly, "What happened to you in Seagull City before, you must not happen again." Chapter 319. Do you know everything? Charlotte's face was immediately covered with sweat. She knew exactly what he had done in Seagull City. Although it was all about his predecessor, he could not argue it out even if he had a lot of mouths. Charlotte suppressed the urge to ask, "You know everything?" She was also worried about whether the Count of Brittany knew about her sister. But he knew that the best outcome for him was to never know for the rest of his life whether the Count of Brittany knew about it. The Count of Brittany took the document and said, "Go out." He got off the military carriage first, freeing himself from the dark luxury. Charlotte also got off the carriage. When he saw the Count boarding the carriage by himself, he thought about it, gritted his teeth, and followed him into the carriage. The Count of Brittany read the document again and again, and was obviously very happy with Anne's new position. After all, which old father would not like to see his daughter have an outstanding future? Although he could handle everything for Anne in Fars, he still couldn't promote Anne to the 24th rank in one go. After all, he was only an earl, not an emperor. Anne still needed to endure for a few years before she could be promoted to an insurmountable class. Charlotte had a position and a political identity in Ingrimer and the Lionheart dynasty, but she couldn't affect Fars. But if this document fell into the hands of the Count of Brittany, he could let his daughter get a considerable status after graduation. This is power. After graduation, Anne of Brittany will be several years ahead of all the young nobles and get a head start in the political arena. Even for the Count of Brittany, this document is a very precious gift. Count Brittany glanced at Charlotte and thought, this kid is not bragging. This document alone is enough to make Anne a legend. He's already famous now. If he writes a few more novels and accumulates more years, even if he does not have a political status, he can enter the upper class. Of course, the identity of a novelist alone is definitely not enough, but in addition to being a novelist, he can also get along well in the Three Empires. He has some skills, although he didn't want to admit it. Count Brittany had to say in his heart, my daughter has a good eye. This kid is almost impeccable except for his moral character. As for moral character, I still want to kill him. Although Count Brittany's murderous intention was not strong, it still made Charlotte tremble with fear for a while. He didn't understand why the Count suddenly wanted to kill him again. He didn't do anything just now. Count Brittany read the document over and over again 7 or 8 times, and then carefully and contentedly put it away. After all, it was the handwritten document of the current Lionheart king. Even among the great nobles, it was a very prestigious thing. Not to mention, this document was closely related to Anne's future. The Count of Brittany put away the document and said lightly, which country do you plan to settle in the future? Charlotte didn't know why the Count asked about this. He said carefully, this matter must depend on your opinion and Anne's opinion. I don't care where I settle down, the Count of Brittany said, you'd better go to Ingrimer in the future. The Lionheart dynasty is also fine, and the New World is also a good choice. Charlotte didn't know what the Count meant by this. Logically speaking, the Count should not help to break up the couple, not to mention that he mentioned you, and this you must include Anne. He thought about it for a while, and was startled in his heart, and whispered, it's all up to you. The Count of Brittany whispered, go out, maybe you can also settle in Fars in the future, who knows? Charlotte didn't dare to say much, and quietly got off the dark luxury, but was shocked and broke into cold sweat. Although the Count of Brittany didn't say anything, and even implied that he agreed with Anne's relationship, the Count also hinted that they would be in danger if they stayed in Fars. Will Fars be defeated, or will the Breton family be in danger? Charlotte thought for a while, but she couldn't figure it out, so she could only stop worrying about it. He issued an order to his subordinates to serve the Count comfortably without any mistakes. At the same time, he was secretly glad that Dorothy and Belissa were left in Machupi, and Anastasia was also sent to Behemoth by him. Otherwise, seeing these beautiful girls in the Knights of Favonius would definitely make the Count of Brittany have a bad impression. With Count Breton and Viscount Constantine at the front, the war did not subside, but became more intense. The Black Phoenix dynasty continued to reinforce, and the number of saints on the front line exceeded 10. The Fars Empire did not continue to support, but soon after the war began, reinforcements came from Ingrimer, which also made the number of saints on the Fars side exceed 10. The armies of both sides were constantly mobilized, and they fought repeatedly in the territory of the South Seraph region. After the army passed through, many areas of South Seraph became no man's land, and several cities were completely destroyed in succession, and a large number of South Seraph women were displaced. Charlotte was ordered by Count Breton not to participate in the battle. He could only devote all his energy to rescuing the South Seraph women. He was constantly sent to the rear by the South Seraph, who lost their homes because of the war, and then sent to different cities. Mecklenburg in Cappadocia City, because he has 2 cities, 3 extraordinary warships, 2 of which are captured Byron warships, and more than 200 warships, is in urgent need of a large number of people. Lady Nansula, who is continuously sent by Charlotte, meets her needs. Mecklenburg has recently been trying to persuade the 3 saints who were originally detained on St. Michael Island to surrender, but has never achieved any results. After Charlotte signed a magic contract with a golden goat herald and seized St. Michael Island, she left St. Michael Island and did not stay in Cappadocia City. She went directly back to the front line of Sedona, so she did not intervene in the matter. Although these three saints have been in prison for a long time, the Golden Goat Herolf has always wanted to subdue them and did not torture them too much. They are unwilling to serve Lao Shanai or Menelman. But Menelman does not want to let them go. Once these saints are free, they may become her enemies. Menelman didn't want to have three more saints as enemies. She occasionally thought that Charlotte could easily organize soldiers from various sources and use strategies to gain the loyalty of the Golden Goat Rolf. If this junior was here, he would definitely be able to solve this problem. However, she also knew that South Seraph was fighting a war. And it was another huge battle after Philandon. It was impossible for her to leave and she could only sigh. Chapter 320, Field Hospital Nights. Charlotte got up in the morning, greeted the Count of Brittany, and then watched his men, helped the Count deliver breakfast, and prepared the black tea that the Count liked, and then hurriedly got down to work. Although he was limited by his status and could not buy many high-end luxury goods, he still did everything properly. The Count did not praise him during this period, but he basically did not have any murderous intent. During this period, Charlotte's Knights of Favonius became active again, and set up camps in almost all areas of South Seraph. These camps basically did not participate in the battle, but mainly carried out medical treatment. Not only did they rescue Lady South Seraph, but they also rescued the wounded soldiers of Fars, Ingrima, and even Black Phoenix. Many of the wounded soldiers of Black Phoenix were left on the battlefield by their own army, but they were found by the Knights of Favonius and brought back to the camp to treat their injuries. They had already become the Knights of the Field Hospital, and were well received not only in Fars, but also in Ingrima and Black Phoenix. Charlotte even gave novels to the wounded for free to help them pass the time. The Lionheart dynasty's envoy asked the major empires for Charlotte's death exemption. Charlotte couldn't be ungrateful and simply changed her career. Charlotte arrived at a nearby camp, which was strictly established in accordance with a modern medical system. Although Charlotte was not a professional, most temporary medical treatment methods were common sense on Earth. Although they might not be known to everyone, there were few people who didn't know them at all. For example, try to use boiling water for disinfection and clean white cloth bandages. As for alcohol, there was really no cheap alcohol in the old world. Charlotte couldn't afford high-end champagne. Low-alcohol fruit wine and beer were definitely useless for disinfection, but they attracted bacteria to grow, so they couldn't be used. Despite this, many injured soldiers still greatly increased their chances of survival. Charlotte toured the camp and sighed slightly. Although he tried his best to save people, the number of wounded soldiers admitted by the Knights of Favonius every day continued to increase. The South Seraph battlefield was like a snowball. The war became more and more intense. The more troops were deployed by both sides, the more soldiers were deployed, and the scale of the battle continued to expand. This was a vicious circle. Charlotte was a little sad, but he also knew that he could not do more. He patrolled the camp, gathered his mood, and went to another camp. He tried his best, but he could only patrol 2 or 3 camps in a day. That night, he could not go back to his own camp, so he rested in a camp. In the middle of the night, Charlotte suddenly heard a commotion and got up in a hurry, only to see an Ingrima army breaking into the camp. He took a breath and shouted loudly, "I am Charlotte Mecklin, which friendly army are you from?" An officer stood up and said politely, "It turns out to be Mr. Mecklin, the Red Dragon Palace's book commissioner and Yaoquin Palace's literary consultant. We are the Firefly Knights. We just fought a battle with a Black Phoenix army. There are a large number of wounded, and we can't take them away. Can you help us take care of these brothers?" Charlotte's position in Ingrima is higher than Fars. He is already a 3rd-level counselor of the 22nd grade. He has long crossed the insurmountable class. He is also a favorite of the 15th Emperor of the Ingrima Empire, His Majesty Alfred Guillaume, so the officer is quite polite. Charlotte said hurriedly, "Hurry up and send everyone in. Did you take all the people away from the battlefield? Are there any left out? Regardless of whether there are any, please tell me the location. We, the Knights of Favonius, will go to help clean up the battlefield." The officer was very happy and said, "I have heard that Mr. Mecklin is a kind-hearted person. Our battle location is in a forest 15 kilometers to the southwest. We won, and Black Phoenix and his men retreated in a hurry, and they didn't have time to rescue their people." Charlotte nodded and said, "I see." He asked someone to welcome this night group in, take in all the wounded, and do an examination. Charlotte is an earthling and knows that some unethical armies will do shameless things, such as sneaking into such field hospitals and then slaughtering doctors and nurses. Therefore, They must check the wounded to see if they are really wounded and whether they are carrying weapons. There are also strict requirements for the army that sends the wounded. After accepting the wounded, Charlotte arranged the defense of the camp, and then led the people to set off in a hurry. Not long after, they found the battlefield. There were about 100 corpses on the battlefield, and dozens of Black Phoenix wounded. The officer of Ingrima was kind enough to remind them. Charlotte buried the bodies of the soldiers on both sides on the spot, marked them, and recorded them, so that the families of these soldiers could carry away the remains of their relatives in the future. Then he took the wounded back to the camp. Charlotte did not expect that when he did this, someone was staring at him in the sky. It was Andresia, the youngest saint of the Black Phoenix dynasty. He sighed and said to himself, "Charlotte Mecklen, you really should only write novels and be a doctor, not go to the battlefield. Since you saved the Black Phoenix soldiers, I will let you go this time. You won't be so lucky next time. I will definitely take you as a prisoner." Andresia also knew that if she went forward and brought back the wounded, it would increase the burden of the march. The fighting was too intense now, and it was too difficult to take care of the wounded. Charlotte's Knights of Favonius changed job to the Knights of the Field Hospital, and they were highly praised within the Black Phoenix Army. Whenever they encountered the Knights of Favonius, most of the Black Phoenix Army would choose to avoid them. Charlotte didn't know that he almost became a prisoner. He brought this group of wounded soldiers of the Black Phoenix Army back to the camp and organized people to treat them. After taking care of 2 batches of wounded soldiers, it was already dawn. Charlotte was about to take a nap when she heard a noisy sound. A group of knights surrounded the camp, and someone shouted, "People inside, come out and surrender, or we will launch an attack." Charlotte hadn't fought for a while, so she was a little surprised to hear that. She led a bunch of maze guards out of the camp, and when she saw that they were in the uniforms of the Knights of Fars, she breathed a sigh of relief and said, "I am Charlotte Mecklen, the 25th grade, 5th level General Affairs Officer of the Empire, and the Patrol Army of Lucavero District." Before Charlotte finished reporting her first political identity, she heard someone on the other side shouting, "Shut up. We just heard that someone was shielding the Black Phoenix Army, so we came to investigate. We have raided 3 camps, and indeed found a large number of Black Phoenix Army wounded. Are you Charlotte Mecklen? We are looking for you." Charlotte was furious when she heard that 3 camps had been thoroughly investigated, but she did not argue, but asked, "What department are you in?" The other party replied, "You don't deserve to know." Charlotte waved her hand and said, "The Black Phoenix Army is attacking, charge." Chapter 321 Political Struggle in the Navy. Harboring the Black Phoenix Army is proven, there is a 70% to 80% chance that he will be hanged. Charlotte is a typical time traveler. There is no option of surrendering and making compromises in his dictionary. For him, "You are unkind and I am unjust. If you use this method to deal with me, I will kill your whole family." Well, this is very Charlotte. And also a time traveler. He now has positions in Ingrima and the Lionheart dynasty. He is really not afraid of the suppression from the Fars officialdom. Charlotte now has 2 saints around him all year round, and a bunch of orcs and pirates who have been transformed into maze guards, including some extraordinary people. When he went out to rescue the wounded on the battlefield just now, the old leopard changed into an ordinary person and hid in the team. If Andreas took action, it would be really fun. With Charlotte's current private armed strength, it would be difficult to defeat him unless Viscount Constantine took action. The knights didn't expect that Charlotte would attack without even making an argument. Some people were immediately panicked and shouted, "We are the Military Law Enforcement Department of the General Office of the Central Government. You dare to attack our Knights of the Law Enforcement Department, and you will be punished." In such a small situation, the Golden Goat Rolf and Domitian would certainly not attack, and even Charlotte had no intention of attacking. Big Bear Tyrant took the lead and swung the meteor hammer, instantly beating more than a dozen Knights of the Law Enforcement Department into pieces. A man who looked like a leader was originally watching coldly with a murderous look on his face, but when he saw dozens of extraordinary people appear, he immediately realized that something was wrong and shouted, "Stop, Charlotte Mecklen, stop, I am." A knight's lance shot out, and the person who attacked was a senior pirate, originally a deputy leader of the Golden Goat Pirates, nicknamed the Sea Snake King, a 13th level extraordinary person, with tricky and vicious pistol skills, and knocked the man's words out of his stomach. After a few moves, the head of the law enforcement department saw his subordinates being slaughtered piece by piece like cutting melons and vegetables. He was shocked and frightened. He didn't know how this mere 5th level General Affairs Director could have so many extraordinary people under him. Charlotte didn't know why this guy came to trouble him. He pointed and said, "Leave this one alive." He didn't mean to kill all the remaining ones. Charlotte was not that cruel, but this sentence sounded like a death sentence to the head of the law enforcement department. Charlotte killed the rest of them, so she must not leave any alive. At most, she would force some confessions and then kill them to silence them. He really didn't expect that a simple mission would hit such a big iron plate. He fought the Sea Serpent King for more than 10 moves, and finally got a breath of fresh air. He shouted, "Charlotte Mecklen, you can't escape even if you kill us." Charlotte said coldly, "I will do a clean job of silencing the witnesses." He turned back and shouted to the barracks, "Which brother of the Black Phoenix Army wants to claim the credit for annihilating the Knights of the Law Enforcement Department?" Someone immediately shouted, "We, the Knights of Kudan, are willing to claim the credit." The leader of the Law Enforcement Department secretly groaned. He didn't expect that Charlotte could do such a thing. He could just find a Black Phoenix Army to claim the credit. He was not the opponent of the Sea Serpent King. He was slightly distracted and was knocked down by the old pirate with a gun. Immediately, more than a dozen soldiers of the Knights of Favonius rushed over and tied him up. The head of the Law Enforcement Department was dragged to Charlotte like a dead dog. Charlotte asked calmly, "Who ordered you to investigate me?" The head of the Law Enforcement Department was quite tough and said, "I want to investigate you." Charlotte nodded and said, "When I return to Strasbourg, I will kill your whole family. I promise that not even a single person will be left alive, including cats and dogs." The head of the Law Enforcement Department was furious and shouted, "Charlotte, you dare to do this? Aren't you afraid of revenge?" Charlotte smiled slightly and said, "Anyway, your whole family is dead." The head of the Law Enforcement Department fell into boundless fear. He didn't expect to meet someone like Charlotte, who was even more terrifying than Zimmerman back then. Zimmerman had never done such a cruel thing. He only killed people in duels, and he would not kill the whole family at will. The head of the Law Enforcement Department whispered, "I am Yannick Orr, the 21st Class 4 warrant officer of the Military Law Enforcement Department. The Duchess of Misa sent me to investigate you." Charlotte was a little surprised. He knew the Duchess of Misa and had been to her auction, but the two had nothing to do with each other. How could he be targeted by the Duchess of Misu? He said nothing and looked at the officer of the Military Law Enforcement Department coldly. With their leader captured alive, the Knights of the Law Enforcement Department lost their fighting spirit and surrendered one after another. As teams of soldiers were captured and escorted to the camp, Yannick Orr, the 21st Class 4 warrant officer of the Military Law Enforcement Department, could no longer bear the pressure and whispered, "It's because you won the heart of Miss Sophia Gallinald." So a junior of the Grand Duchess was very angry and wanted to teach you a lesson. Charlotte didn't expect that this matter could be so tortuous, and said lightly, "Who?" Yannick Orr said, "Alan's cook. The General Affairs Director of the Logistics Department of the Central Government Office." Charlotte tilted her head and said, "I don't believe it. Give you one last chance. Grand Duchess Misu is indeed powerful, but Charlotte really doesn't believe that the Grand Duchess is going to kill him just for a junior. Although he is not from a noble family and has roots in Fars, the Grand Duchess must have a reason for doing this. Alan's cook can only be a fuse, not a bomb." Yannick Orr's forehead was covered with sweat, and he whispered, "It's because of the fleet." Charlotte hesitated for a moment, and then suddenly realized, Anne had said at the auction that the Duchess of Misu was in charge of 1/6 of the Empire's navy. The Northern Fleet was the family-inherited army of the Duchess of Misu, and never pledged allegiance to the Emperor, but only to the Misa family. If it weren't for Zimmerman Axelrobin bringing back the Pirate King's fleet, the Duchess of Misu would have lost part of her fleet while exploring the raging sea a few years ago. The size of the Northern Fleet at its peak would have been half of the size of the Imperial Navy. However, with the disappearance of Zimmerman, the Duchess of Misa sold a large amount of property and used it to build new warships, and began to gradually become stronger. Although it has not yet recovered to its peak, it has already played an important role in the Imperial Navy. Unfortunately, all this was broken by Menelman. Menelman owned 3 magic alchemical warships. St. Michael Island and Cappadocia were just ordinary seaside ports, not a big deal, but they were already a newly rising force in the Imperial Navy. Chapter 322, Giants and Ants. Duchess Misa wants to restore her position in the Imperial Navy. Menelman is a new rising force in the Imperial Navy. The conflict between the two sides is on the verge of breaking out and may escalate at any time. In the early stage, Mecklenburg even had to rely on robbing pirates and Charlotte's funding to gain a foothold, which shows how much this senior sister was excluded and suppressed in the Navy. This suppression is 100% from Duchess Misu. Now Duchess Misu can't do anything about Mecklenburg. Perhaps she heard that Charlotte had helped her, so she turned to pinch a soft persimmon. As for the jealousy of the younger generation, it was just a side issue. Or Duchess Misu wanted to attack Mecklenburg, but she didn't know which target to choose for a while. Mr. Allen's cook provided her with a target. Of course, Charlotte would not let Mr. Allen's cook go. Damn it, why are we suddenly in conflict with Duchess Misu? Although Charlotte complained, he also understood that he was still a small figure in the Far's empire system and still could not cross the insurmountable class. Duchess Misu roughly treated him as an ant on the roadside, and when she was about to crush him to death, she did not bother to consider whether he had a backer. Anyway, even if he had a backer, he might not be able to withstand the power of Duchess Misu, and he would not choose to offend a powerful female archduchess for Charlotte. Although they are both archduchesses, the power of Duchess Misu is not comparable to that of Ferdinand and Joseph. This pair of useless archduchesses may not be as powerful as several powerful earls in the empire. This is the most hateful thing. Charlotte pondered for a long time, thinking about how to solve the current dilemma. If the Duchess of Misu fails to deal with him once, she may continue to attack him, or she may change her target. However, the conflict between the Duchess of Misu and senior sister Mecklenburg is irreconcilable. After all, everyone wants to compete for power in the Navy. Therefore, even if Charlotte can escape once, she will still offend the Duchess of Misu in the future. Charlotte did not think of asking the Count of Brittany for help. The political struggle within the empire is chaotic and complicated. It is impossible for the Count of Brittany to fight the Duchess of Misu to death for the Sumrei family. After all, the Count of Brittany must have enemies in the political arena. The Count cannot be so naive as to invest in the future of the family for his daughter's prospective boyfriend. Yannick Orr's heart is getting colder and colder. He is not telling the truth. This matter is indeed related to the Duchess of Misu, but the Archduchess did not let him do so much and directly accused Charlotte of harboring enemy soldiers. The result of this is that there is no room for conversion between the two sides. A mature politician cannot play so low. Of course, Duchess Misu also knew that her intention would not be fully implemented, but she really didn't care. Charlotte was just a 25th grade, 5th level general secretary. For a duchess, she really had no sense of existence. Yannick Orr could no longer withstand the pressure and said loudly, "I can help you solve this problem. As long as you allow me to live, I can help you forge evidence." Charlotte interrupted him and said, "No need, I also have a position in Ingrima. As a 22nd grade, 3rd level counselor of the Ingrima Empire, a commissioner of the Red Dragon Palace and a literary consultant of the Yaoquan Palace, a general secretary of Cappadocia City and St. Michael City, at most I can live in another country." Charlotte's position in Ingrima is already a public matter, but her position in the Lionheart dynasty is still confidential. The Lionheart dynasty is very considerate and did not choose to make it public. Charlotte only talked about it with the Count of Brittany, after all, and also took a document. Charlotte didn't mean to show off, so she only mentioned the position in Ingrima. Yannick Orr sweated more on his forehead. He had heard that Charlotte had a position in Ingrima, but he didn't know that this guy had such a high position in Ingrima. The point is that the Red Dragon Palace is the main residence of the emperors of Ingrima, and the Nether Spring Palace is the place where the emperors of all dynasties spent their summers. Being able to hold a government position in these two places and being able to see His Majesty the Emperor at any time, he can be called a close minister and has a promising future. He couldn't help but regret secretly, thinking, if I had known earlier, I would have done more research. How could this Charlotte have such good luck? He only went to Ingrima once as an envoy, and he was able to get such a high position. Yannick Orr couldn't help but beg, "Mr. Charlotte Mecklen, please let me go. I will definitely repent. I did something wrong about this matter, and I am willing to do everything I can to make up for it." Charlotte smiled slightly and said, "Really no need, but it would be a pity to kill you." Yannick Orr was overjoyed and shouted hurriedly, "I am very useful, I am very useful." Of course, he didn't know what fate was waiting for him. Charlotte took the captured knights of the law enforcement department to Machupi and transformed them all into labyrinth guards. Even though Charlotte occasionally felt sorry and even had a bit of a heart of saint, she would never show mercy when it came to life and death. Once these people went back, They would definitely tell everyone about their battle with the Knights of the Law Enforcement Department. This kind of thing was absolutely not allowed in the system of the empire. The Military Law Enforcement Department of the General Office of the Central Government cannot be resisted. Well, this department has great power. In order to avoid suspicion, Charlotte did not even touch on this matter, but let the prisoners of the Black Phoenix Army report to the Black Phoenix dynasty and completely wiped out the Knights of the Law Enforcement Department of Fars. This document was intentionally intercepted by Knights of Ingrima and transferred to friendly forces. After a series of operations that had nothing to do with Charlotte, it was confirmed that this Knights of the Law Enforcement Department had indeed disappeared from this world. The Knights of Bitterton thus received an extra grand reward. This Knights had just been beaten to collapse by Claire not long ago, and they had never expected that a few injured soldiers who were left behind could actually bring back such a big credit. However, Charlotte did not take it lightly. He skipped the fact that the Knights of the Law Enforcement Department were completely wiped out, and only said that he learned from a certain channel that someone wanted to investigate him, and asked the Count of Brittany about this matter. After listening to him, the Count of Brittany smiled faintly and said, "Misu is still so domineering, I probably can't control Misu's will, but the Knights of the Law Enforcement Department should enforce the law impartially." The Count said nothing, but Charlotte was clear in her mind. She went back and sent all the wounded soldiers of the Black Phoenix Army to Machupi, waiting for the next investigation by the Knights of the Law Enforcement Department. This matter is definitely not over. Chapter 323 Tax Investigation Case. The Military Law Enforcement Department of the General Office of the Central Government will not stop investigating a matter just because the Knights sent out are all wiped out. They will only send out a second Knight group again. When the second investigation is launched, the details of the previous one's annihilation will also be investigated. After being reminded by the Count of Brittany, Charlotte was ready. 10 days later, he welcomed the second investigation. The law enforcement officer who led the Knights this time was indeed fair and just. After a round of investigation, he did not find that Charlotte had sheltered the wounded soldiers of the Black Phoenix Army. He wrote a report truthfully and submitted it to the superiors. After the Knights of this law enforcement department left, Charlotte thought it should be over, and just breathed a sigh of relief, but she didn't expect that there would be a third law enforcement Knight group soon. This time they came to investigate the taxation of the South Seraph region. This matter is troublesome. Especially the person leading the team is actually called Alan's Cook. This 26th level, 4th level General Affairs Director of the Central Government Office Logistics Department, no more, no less, just one level lower than Charlotte, was temporarily transferred to the Law Enforcement Department for a legitimate reason, because he was good at taxation. Alan's Cook did not go directly to Charlotte. He went around the South Seraph region and soon got a lot of first-hand evidence. This evidence showed that Charlotte had never collected taxes. And he handed the investigation report directly to the Count of Brittany. Charlotte didn't expect that this matter was not over yet. Yannick's method was too rough. This is the method of a serious nobleman. It will not force people to riot, but it will make people uncomfortable to the greatest extent. Charlotte had to go to the Count of Brittany to explain the taxation to Alan's Cook. Charlotte met this rival in her dark luxury. God has pity, he has never done anything to Miss Sophia Gallinold, and he even almost forgot about this Strasbourg rose. Well, in front of the Count of Brittany, he must forget all the other ladies. This is basic courtesy. Alan's Cook is a very handsome and well-mannered man. Charlotte did not expect that this guy has a dark heart, but he looks like a decent person. Alan's Cook took out a notebook and said calmly, "Mr. Charlotte Mecklen, there is solid evidence that you did not collect taxes in the South Seraph region, but I still want to hear your opinion." He leaned over and bowed slightly to the Count of Brittany, and said, "This is what the Count meant." Charlotte thought to herself, bullshit. Why would the Count of Brittany care about such a trivial matter? He suppressed his anger and said, "South Seraph is not my fiefdom. I have no obligation to collect taxes, nor do I have the power to collect taxes." Alan's Cook smiled slightly and said, "But you are the General Affairs Officer of Arcadia Port, Sedona City, Solvang City, Carmel Town, and Interlaken City in the South Seraph region. In the absence of the fiefdom nobles, you are obliged to collect taxes on behalf of the nobles, and you are also obliged to collect taxes for the empire. The other regions are indeed not your rights and obligations, but what about the taxes of these 5 cities?" And from the records, it seems that you have been away from the South Seraph region for some time. Please explain this matter as well. Count Breton had a smile on his face, and he had no intention of interrupting. Charlotte didn't know what the old count was thinking, so she could only explain patiently, the war in South Serif has been going on, and the population has plummeted, so it's impossible to collect taxes. I can't even find residents to collect taxes from in many cities. There are empty houses everywhere, and no one knows where they have gone or if they have died in the war. Charlotte was a math teacher after all, and she was the one who personally managed the business of migrating the residents of South Serif to other cities. She immediately cited the populations of 5 cities and said, Sedona currently has a population of less than 1,000, and Interlaken has only 3 residents. How do you want me to collect taxes? Alan's cook said mercilessly. These cities have experienced war, but the port of Arcadia has not been affected by the war. This port city has at least 60,000 residents, but they still haven't paid a penny in taxes. Charlotte thought to herself, I'm familiar with accounting. He made up a bunch of data at the time and said, that's right, the port of Arcadia was not affected by the war and the economy remained good, but we fought at least 3 major battles in South Serif. The one against Duke Joseph drew supplies worth at least tens of thousands of IQ from the port of Arcadia. The First Breton offensive also drew a huge amount of supplies from the port of Arcadia. In these 2 battles alone, the 2 sides launched more than 300 battles in total. The number of casualties among Fars soldiers exceeded 60,000, causing a 45% loss of the civilian population in the South Serif region. The property losses were innumerable and could not be effectively counted. The supplies drawn from the port of Arcadia were countless. These were originally temporary taxes. According to relevant national laws, the port of Arcadia would be exempted from taxes for at least 15 years while fighting. As for the Second Breton Offensive, the First Breton Offensive was named after Claire Breton. This battle was named after the Count of Brittany and was also called the Second Breton Offensive. Charlotte said with a sad face, not to mention the loss of ordinary soldiers and civilians, we even lost a saint. Well, only one saint fell. That was Cronlove Bowl. This guy was of a high rank. His death even shocked the royal family and countless nobles. Otherwise, the Count of Brittany would not have come to South Serif. Alan's cook's handsome face was bulging with blue veins. He did not expect Charlotte to be so difficult to deal with. All kinds of data came out of his mouth, and the examples were smooth and smooth. Charlotte Mecklen was a clerk in the general office of the central government. She was also familiar with various rules and was quite experienced in dealing with them. In front of the Count of Brittany, the 2 sides argued and argued endlessly for a whole day, but there was still no result. Although Charlotte was at the peak of the middle level, she still felt miserable. This kind of argument was too exhausting. Aaron's cook suddenly slapped the small table in the carriage with both hands and shouted, do you believe that I will go to Behemoth to investigate your tax problems? Charlotte took a deep breath and had already thought of killing this guy. He had not been in charge of the South Serif region for long, and nominally he was only the general affairs officer of 5 cities, but Behemoth was his hometown. He had done too many things in Silver Pigeon Castle and Mostar Castle. Although Charlotte had prepared a backup plan, it was obviously unable to withstand this kind of investigation. The Count of Brittany had been silent until now, but now he smiled and said, why don't I make a suggestion? Alan's cook hurriedly said, everything is up to the Count of Brittany. The Count of Brittany smiled and said, it's just a suggestion, not an order, Charlotte. You pay 3,000 ecu as a fine, and the matter will be settled. Charlotte nodded in agreement without hesitation. Although this matter was a bit disgusting, he would never contradict the Count of Brittany. As for the 3,000 ecu, Charlotte must make sure that Alan's cook gets the money alive, but not die. Alan's cook smiled coldly and said, Grand Duke Misu means to let Mr. Charlotte Mecklen be demoted from the position of the 5th level General Secretary of the 25th grade to the 3rd level General Secretary of the 27th grade, and let him make up the tax within a time limit, and he has to go back to Strasbourg to report on his work, and he can't lead the Knights of Favonius for the time being, Count of Brittany said lightly. Then listen to the Grand Duchess of Misu. Although he was rejected, Count of Brittany was not angry at all, but the look in his eyes when he looked at Alan's cook was a bit like looking at a dead person. Count of Brittany had already written a private letter to Grand Duchess Misu, and reached a tacit understanding, so he proposed to solve the problem with 3,000 ecu. After all, Duchess Misu wanted to strike Menelman in this matter. Now the situation of the Sumri family is not good, and it is time to add insult to injury. As for the Count of Brittany, he was the target of Duchess Misu's wooing. This count was not only the best fighter in the Fars Empire, but also a powerful count. His private knights were extraordinary, and even His Majesty the Emperor was unwilling to offend him easily. But the opinions put forward by Alan's cook were obviously inconsistent with the opinions of Duchess Misu, and he was 100% self-willed. Alan's cook was not afraid either. He thought that he had the support of Duchess Misa behind him, so he was not afraid of the Count of Brittany, let alone Charlotte. Charlotte smiled slightly and followed the opinion of the Count of Brittany, saying, "I respect the opinion of the Count in everything." Alan's cook felt that he had won a great victory, smiled slightly, and said, "That's it. I suggest that the investigation of Behemoth be put on hold for the time being. After all, we are still at war and we can't always disrupt the front line." There was a hint of threat in his words. The investigation of Behemoth was only temporarily put on hold, not abandoned. Charlotte thought that the matter was over. Aaron's cook said, "Even if the tax investigation case is closed, Mr. Mecklin, do you have an explanation for your long absence from South Seraph?" Charlotte said in a deep voice, "If I wasn't in South Seraph, wouldn't Chloe, the commander of the Black Phoenix Army, call me? Please use your brain." Aaron's cook was choked and said angrily, "Don't force me to restart the tax investigation. Please tell me your whereabouts honestly." Charlotte replied disdainfully, "I'm in South Seraph. Please don't mention suspicions without evidence." Charlotte was very confident in his control over South Seraph. He didn't believe that the other party could have any evidence. Alan's cook stared at Charlotte fiercely for a long time before saying, "I will continue to investigate this matter. There is one more thing I want to know. How did my good friend Yannick Orr die?" Charlotte laughed in anger and said, "You ask me about this, why don't you ask the intelligence officer on the front line? He was ambushed by the Black Phoenix Army and was wiped out by the Knights of Sutan. How do you need me to explain this? I'm on the front line, not a babysitter." Alan's cook hammered the table with both hands and shouted, "I absolutely don't believe that Yannick Orr will die in battle. He is a high-level extraordinary." "Do you know what a high-level extraordinary is, you bastard raised by a businessman?" Charlotte stood up and was about to teach this guy a lesson. "What is a bastard raised by a businessman?" Charlotte must let him know what it means to be able to take action, so don't talk nonsense. Beat this guy first. If it comes to taking action, Charlotte is not afraid of ordinary extraordinary people. He is not a saint. Aaron's cook was not to be outdone and shouted, "Do you really think that you are a powerful person just because you have won a few battles by luck? I want to let you know that a merchant son of a bitch is not qualified to sit with the nobles." The Count of Brittany shouted, "Enough. Let's go out and duel." The two immediately rushed out of the dark luxury, without paying attention to the challenge letter first. Aaron's cook did not bring any weapons because he wanted to meet the Count of Brittany. Charlotte was too embarrassed to take out the blood rose and the red and blue rattlesnake, so she also urged her fists and fought with the other party. Don't say that Aaron's cook is really good at fighting. If he didn't think he was extraordinary, how could he have the courage to pursue the Strasbourg Rose? Sophia Gallinold can always be known for having too high standards. Charlotte relied on her agility and fast boxing and kicking skills to find a few flaws and slap Alan's cook a few times, but this guy was so strong that he was not hurt at all. Even the dark erosion could not invade him. His face turned red and he was furious. He felt that this was a great shame. Charlotte knew that he was not good at boxing and kicking. His sword skills were mainly trained by Hughes, and his spear skills were mainly taught by Julian. No one taught him boxing and kicking skills, and he had never experienced actual combat, and there was not even any formal inheritance. However, Alan's cook had worked hard on barehanded martial arts before. If he continued to fight like this, it would be very difficult to achieve a decent result. The two fought fiercely for a while, and Charlotte retreated half a step. Just when she was about to provoke the other party so that she could use weapons, the Count of Brittany said, "That's enough." Charlotte stopped immediately. Alan's cook wanted to duel again, but after looking at the Count of Brittany a few times, he could only give up in disappointment and turned away. After returning to the camp of the Knights of the Law Enforcement Department, he immediately wrote a document and sent someone to send it back to Strasbourg. Charlotte originally thought that his punishment would come soon, but he didn't expect that he would have to wait for half a month. There were several more battles on the front line, but they had nothing to do with him. He didn't wait for his punishment, and there was no movement from Strasbourg. Even the fine of 3,000 ekis that was originally mentioned was not mentioned. Instead, he waited for the promotion document from Strasbourg. This time, he was finally promoted to the 24th grade first-level political participant. Well, except for the promotion, his political status has not changed. Charlotte knew very well that this was the means used by the Count of Brittany. However, the means of such a nobleman are like moistening things silently, and there will be no open struggle at all. Along with the promotion of his position, Charlotte also learned another piece of news. Because of the stalemate and no progress in the battle between Felindon and the South Seraph region, Fars planned to open up a third battlefield. This time the battlefield is not on land, but on the sea. The main force of this battle is the northern fleet of Duchess Misu. Moreover, this time, Fars received the full support of Ingrima. The Ingrima Empire sent out 10 magic alchemy warships, a total of 300 warships, ready to fight a decisive battle with Bayron on the sea. This time, in terms of strength, the coalition forces of Fars and Ingrima have an absolute advantage. The main reason is that as an island country, Ingrima has always been the focus of military development and has invested countless resources. In terms of naval strength, Ingrima's Royal Navy is the first in the New and Old continents. And it is absolutely undisputed. The second was once the pirate coalition of Zimmerman for a short time, and now it is the navy of the Fars Empire. Because Bayron has few ports near the sea, its naval strength has always been weak. Although it has received naval support from the Black Phoenix dynasty, it is still far inferior to the combined fleet of the Royal Navy of Fars and Ingrima. This time, the Emperor of Fars, Julius Axel VI, was determined to win this naval battle and personally named it a Goddess of Victory Offensive. Because the commanders of the two most powerful fleets of the Imperial Navy are both women. When Charlotte got this information, she was a little worried about Senior Mandelman, but he really couldn't leave now. The intensity of the battle between the two sides in the Second Breton Offensive was far greater than the first one. It was difficult to find a city with residents in the entire South Seraph region. If we use an old Chinese saying, it would be, bone exposed in the wild, no cock crows for 1,000 miles. The battle was so tragic that Charlotte wanted to convert to Buddhism every time she thought about it. Of course, there is no such religion in this world, only the 9 orthodox gods. If South Seraph is a meat grinder, then the entire South Seraph region has no flesh and blood to be swallowed by this huge mill. The next day, Count Brittany called Charlotte over and said solemnly, "Our battle with the Black Phoenix dynasty has reached the point where both sides can no longer sustain it. Unless Constantine and I have a duel, this battle will never change, but we will definitely not take action, otherwise the direction of the war will be unpredictable. So the Empire plans to draw a part of them to join the Navy, and use the advantages of our joint Navy with Ingrima to completely eliminate Byron's Navy, thus turning the entire war situation around." Charlotte asked, "Are you going to ask me to go to the Navy again?" Brittany smiled and said, "How is that possible? You belong to the local forces, and after you were transferred to the Knights Templar, you are still in the army. There is no way you can be transferred to the Navy. What's more, you don't have any knowledge of navigation, and you can't command warships. If you go to the Navy, you can only send warships. I'm leaving. Constantine will leave too. The new commander of the South Seraph War Zone is." Count Brittany deliberately kept it a secret. Chapter 324 South Seraph War Zone Commander. Charlotte had a bad omen, and sure enough, he soon heard his name from the mouth of Count Breton. The new commander of the South Seraph War Zone is you, Charlotte Mecklen. Charlotte couldn't help but say, "With so many saints, how could it be my turn?" Count Breton smiled and said, "There will be no saints here soon." Charlotte was a little surprised, but soon understood. South Seraph had been completely crippled, and there were almost no people here, although most of them were moved away by him, not killed in the war. But for the Empire, a war zone that needs to constantly transport supplies and has no way to resupply on the spot is not worth continuing to invest in. Especially this direction is of no help to the war situation. Originally, this battle was launched temporarily, and both sides mistakenly thought that the other side was going to launch a major battle in the direction of South Seraph, but no one thought it was just a misunderstanding. Now no one wants to invest in troops, so they will naturally throw it to an ordinary general. Charlotte is the best choice, no one else. After all, he is the general affairs officer of the 5 cities in the South Seraph region, and he has been here long enough. For the superiors, he is familiar with the situation and can stabilize the situation. Well, he is a natural tinker. Charlotte took a deep breath. He didn't want to take the blame, but he also knew that he was the best choice. If it were someone else, they would definitely not have any good feelings towards South Seraph. Just collecting materials would make South Seraph worse. Only he could take care of the people here more. He whispered, Is there no benefit? Count Brittany was not surprised at all. He had investigated many things about Charlotte and knew this young man better than Anne. He liked Charlotte's reckless and upward climbing. This was also the fundamental reason why Count Brittany wanted to kill him countless times, but finally did not kill him. Count Brittany, looking at Charlotte, could not help but secretly pondering, I don't believe that there is such a thing as the power of love in the world. But this boy has been completely transformed since he met Anne. Not only has he worked hard, but he has also changed his previous decadent life. Even when facing the first rows of the empire, he only talks to his seniors and juniors. Even when facing Princess Guillaume, he never oversteps the line. Even when he met Sophia Galinold, there was no private contact between them. Even I want to see if there is such a thing as the power of love. Of course, if it will hurt Anne, I will definitely stop it decisively. Count Brittany pondered for a long time before he smiled faintly and said, Didn't I say that you will be the commander of the South Seraph Theater? At the time, Claire Breton's political identity was the temporary military governor of the Principality of Behemoth, the highest political official in the Dominion. Claire also said that Charlotte's position was too low and she could not be a military governor. But within the Fars Empire system, there is a temporary political division that is lower than the autonomous region, called the War Zone. Generally speaking, when new land is found, it will be temporarily designated as a war zone. After the rule is stabilized, it will be determined whether it is an overseas territory or an overseas vassal state. If the South Seraph region is downgraded to war zone, then the commander who accepts the appointment will have no restrictions on his position. Charlotte has no doubt that if he is still alive after the war, South Seraph will be restored to a region, and the commander's position will be promoted to Archon. There may not even be prefixes such as temporary and military. Just like Krell's current identity as the temporary military Archon of the Principality of Behemoth, he has never been withdrawn. After the war is over, Krell will 100% remove the two prefixes of temporary and military and become the Archon of the Behemoth region. Well, Behemoth will no longer have a new Grand Duke, nor will it keep the name of the Principality. Charlotte doesn't think there's anything wrong with this. Next, as the Count of Brittany said, the Count of Brittany and Viscount Constantine withdrew one after another, and the holy orders of both sides also withdrew one by one. Even the dozens of knights who had been deployed withdrew one by one from the South Seraph region. Then the South Seraph region was downgraded to war zone, and Charlotte was appointed as the commander of the war zone. South Seraph was restored to the scene where only the knights of Favonius and Chloe's knights were left, and the two old rivals confronted each other. Charlotte didn't relax for long before he was recalled to Strasbourg. The Military Law Enforcement Department of the Central Government Office launched a fourth investigation into him. The person who temporarily led the Knights of Favonius in his place was Dorothy Sumini. Dorothy followed Charlotte Mechlin and experienced countless battles. The accumulated military merits were terrible. Unknowingly, she had been promoted to the 24th level of first-level participation in politics, easily crossing the insurmountable class. Well, Charlotte's current position is as high as this deputy. Charlotte returned to Strasbourg and went to the central government office several times in a row. She was told that the investigation team against him had not yet been established and could not start the investigation. She asked him to go home and wait patiently. This response was really weird. Charlotte had no choice but to date Anne every day to pass the time. Anne was about to graduate. Occasionally, when she had no classes, she would accompany Charlotte to the central government office to ask about the graduation assignment. This time when she returned to Strasbourg, Charlotte really felt that the war had also affected the city. Many materials began to be in short supply, and even some goods and food were ordered by law not to be provided. On the fourth day after Charlotte returned to Strasbourg, she even encountered the embarrassment of not being able to buy coffee. Several nearby stores stopped supplying because it was said that coffee beans could not be transported. Many residents of Strasbourg began to secretly store food because there were rumors that Strasbourg would soon implement food control and daily rationing. Although Charlotte had some information channels, she was not sure whether this would happen. Fortunately, he had already started hoarding food a long time ago, and at that time it was to provide supplies for Menelman. But now Menelman has 3 magic alchemy warships, an island and a port, and he is no longer short of supplies. On the contrary, because he has a large fleet and controls the trade routes on the sea, he can continuously import resources into the inland. Charlotte not only has no shortage of supplies, but also makes a lot of money through Louis Samy and Ross Bader, as well as the merchants who have come to her. On the 5th day after Charlotte returned to Strasbourg, Sophia Gallinold suddenly visited. Chapter 325 Every beautiful lady in Strasbourg has a serious crime. Sophia Gallinold did not come alone, she also brought a team of servants with her. When she saw Charlotte, she thanked him again for saving her life last time and apologized for the investigation. Charlotte was a person who could distinguish right from wrong. She knew that this matter had nothing to do with the Strasbourg rose. She smiled and said, "This matter can only be attributed to your great charm, Sophia. It is not your fault. If Sophia, you are also at fault, then Miss Mendelman is guilty of a serious crime. Every beautiful lady in Strasbourg is guilty of a serious crime." Sophia Gallinold was particularly worried. Charlotte was angry because of this, and she didn't know why. All was worried that Charlotte would alienate herself because of this, seeing that he was still talking and laughing, not forgetting to make a joke, not minding at all, finally put down her worries and said, "I have asked my father to help explain this to the Duchess of Missou. She will never embarrass you again." Charlotte thought to herself, "I have just been recalled to Strasbourg to cooperate with the investigation of the military law enforcement department. How can I tell that the Duchess intends to let me go?" However, he would not complain to Sophia Gallinold about these things. After all, he did not think that the Minister of War would offend the Duchess of Missou for him. This kind of complaint is meaningless except showing weakness. Although Charlotte can't do anything to the Duchess at present, he is a time traveler after all, and his mentality is different. He always believes that sooner or later he will surpass the power of the Duchess of Missou. As the saying goes, it is better to bully an old man than to bully a poor young man. There will be a day when a dragon will wear a phoenix, and I don't believe that I will have holes in my pants for a lifetime. Sophia Gallinold clapped her hands, and the servants brought up the whale-killing spear. She said, "I should have returned it to you earlier. But you have been on the battlefield all the time. I am relieved that I can finally return it to its original owner today. It is an honor to keep the weapons of the Count of Victory Champagne in his early years, even if it is only for a short period of time." Charlotte smiled slightly, and did not refuse. He had not intended to give this knight's lance to Sophia Gallinold. The whale-killing spear is a famous spear with a long history, and its reputation far exceeds its practical value. He asked Mrs. Nancy to take the lance to her bedroom first, and then smiled and said, "I wonder if I have the honor to invite Miss Sophia to have lunch with me." Sophia Gallinold readily agreed. Charlotte asked Mrs. Wu Muzijiang to prepare a relatively rich lunch. There are all kinds of shops on Champagne Field Street. By the standards of ordinary people, this lunch is rich beyond imagination, and Mrs. Wu Muzijiang's craftsmanship is also very good. But Charlotte had recently come into contact with many nobles, and knew about their lives. Of course, she also knew that according to the standards of the nobles, this meal could be considered shabby. But Charlotte didn't care much. This was the unparalleled confidence possessed by the time travelers and those who succeeded step by step in this world. This confidence made him not need to deliberately please anyone. At the dinner table, Sophia Gallinold invited Charlotte to a dance. Charlotte hesitated for a moment and decisively refused, saying, "I'm sorry, I really want to attend your dance, but you also know that I come from an ordinary family. I may not be happy at this kind of dance, and it may also make other people unhappy, so I'd better not go." Sophia sighed slightly. Of course, she knew that something unpleasant might happen. This kind of invitation to a social dance means that Charlotte can step into her social circle, which is equivalent to an implicit declaration. She actually wanted to make this declaration, "Charlotte Mecklin and I are friends." Sophia could only whisper, "I was inconsiderate. I'll invite you to a smaller party later." Sophia planned to select strictly and reminded Charlotte in advance that the more reliable the friends, the better. Charlotte smiled slightly. In fact, she had other concerns, but it was not convenient to say it directly. After lunch, Sophia Gallinold sat for a while before getting up to say goodbye. She deliberately didn't bring a gift when she came to visit today. She planned to come again next time with the excuse of forgetting to bring a gift. Charlotte saw Sophia Gallinold off. In fact, there was a little sweat on her forehead. She was always worried that Anne would suddenly come to the door at this time. Although this matter could be explained, it was obviously best not to explain it. This time when he came back, he didn't invite his friends to the party. Of course, the main reason was that Dorothy, Anastasia, and Belissa had not returned, so he could only invite Vinnie Arsenault and Sylvie Martin. The former was a little distant, and the latter was a little awkward, so he simply did not invite her. Not long after Sophia Galliano left, Miss Anne de Breton came to visit. Charlotte was very happy to see Anne, and Anne followed her to the third-floor bedroom, and was also very happy when she saw the whale killer. Anne did not even hide it and said, "I think 221B Baker Street, Val d'Oise, is short of a few weapons as decorations. Can I take this whale killer and put it in the living room?" Charlotte thought about it and said, "It just so happens that I just got a Knight's Lance of the same model, so I'll take it and put it in 221B Baker Street." Anne smiled with curved eyebrows and bright eyes. She had been thinking about this for more than a day or two. She waited happily for a while, and then Charlotte wrapped up the butcher and killer whales, fixed them on the roof of the dark and luxurious carriage, and accompanied Anne to the Val d'Oise district. On the way, Charlotte asked Anne about her graduation assignment. Anne said with some distress, "In theory, my job should have been assigned long ago, but every time I asked, the receptionist at the central government office said that they were going through the process. I can't even ask which process it is stuck in. This is too weird." Charlotte smiled slightly and comforted, "There must be a big surprise." Charlotte knew this very well. The Count of Brittany even told him not to tell Anne that he wanted to give his daughter a big surprise. The position of the Lionheart dynasty, under the operation of the Count of Brittany, can allow Anne to obtain the same position in Fars. The process is indeed complicated, especially the Count wants to make every step perfect, which makes it a little more complicated. The two arrived at the Val d'Oise area. Charlotte hadn't been here for a long time and didn't notice that there were many items belonging to Anne. Especially a set of sterling silver tableware, which was very attractive. They were exquisitely crafted and had beautiful patterns. Charlotte felt a little strange when she saw it. The tableware of ordinary people was cheap tin, and the tableware of rich people was mostly silver. But the tableware used by aristocratic ladies like Anne must be more expensive porcelain. He thought Anne didn't use more luxurious items to save her face. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.